All right, I should be live again. Sorry if you guys were just tuned into the last one. That was a test stream today. This is the real stream here, so let's see if we got anybody on the chat. I'm going to use my phone as my chat checker. Today is a new series, everyone, so I'm looking forward to it. This is the first time I've done a actually, the last time I done a stream was early 2025, so I'm looking forward to this. If anybody is in the chat, feel free to talk. I don't know how many people will be interested in this, but we will figure it out. We got Atomics_real. Hello, sir. How we doing? First chatter of the stream. Let's see if anybody wants to come in here today. So this is a different kind of live stream. Okay, so let me go to my PowerPoint. Let's go to present. Oh, I don't remember how to present on here. Oh gosh, I'm so incompetent when it comes to PowerPoint presentations as opposed to, I'm used to Google Slides, but for college I have to use PowerPoint to present. So give me a sec here real quick. So this is a new series. Also, guys, if you're wondering why the audio sounds good, I'm in the multimedia studio here at the library at my college, and check out this microphone right here. This is a freaking nice, it's a nice microphone. So we're using it today. I just screwed it up. It just went back, so I need to readjust. Oh, it's really nice. This is a really nice thing. All right. Oh yeah, I gotta tighten it here. Oh no, I did that. Okay. If the audio screws up, I hope it doesn't. Okay. Let me move this thing off of it. Okay. That should still be good. All right. Give me just a sec, folks. We're going to get started with this video. All right, let's do, okay. It's P. Oh my gosh. PC screen only. No, that's not what I want to do. Okay. All right. This is how you present. Okay. Boom. Figured it out. Okay. I have 3 viewers. That's true. Surprised. I don't know if you guys would be interested in this kind of video, but as we are doing full-on history content now, I have decided to... oh, yes, you guys can donate if you want to. I have super chats enabled, so if you want to donate, that would be very appreciated. Obviously, you do not have to by any means, but that would be really cool. So anyway, all right, so I did get it to present. So today, I'm just going to talk to you guys what we're going to be doing. And this is going to be more of an interactive stream as long as we have people in the chat to talk about some of this stuff. But this is the first stream in a series of streams that I'm going to be doing on this channel where we are going to be going through the history of the United States of America, because this year is 2026 and the U.S. declared independence in 1776. So it has been 250 years since the founding of the country, and so I am celebrating by doing, I want to say weekly, but it's probably not going to be weekly because my schedule is crazy. We're going to be going through all of U.S. history. Today, we're going to start with Pre-Columbian America. Now, do I get a laser pointer here? Is this a laser pointer? This is oh, I do get a laser pointer. All right, I'm sick. So we're going to start with Pre-Columbian America today. This is going to be a unique episode in the series because we are not covering the United States. We're going to be covering the broad region of North and South America today and discussing what it was like prior to European arrival. And we're going to be doing a 2 to 3 hour probably stream discussing this topic. So this is going to be very different because in this video we're going to be covering a much more wide range of material than normal and also a greater time period than normal. And so it's going to be tough to this is just going to be different. So I'm really excited. I haven't done too many videos on Pre-Columbian America. I've done a few videos and I have a video in the works on Native American history, but I personally think Native American history is very underrated in society. So we're going to be jumping into that today. But we're going to get into this in a minute once we get some people on here. So now we have Bruno in the chat. Nice to see you. I just got off the phone with him earlier. He said he was gonna pop in. So, and we should get the legendary Marlene in here as well. So I like how YouTube has this new feature. We got 3 viewers right now. I haven't streamed since in about a year, so it's been a while. So I'm looking forward to this. I also have 3 YouTube videos we're going to be reacting to today to kind of get a deeper dive on everything. So I'm going to do some polls in the chat occasionally throughout the stream to get your guys' opinions. So this is going to be a don't feel like this is a lecture, because it's not. You guys are just involved as I am. Grant would find this intriguing. I think he would. This is historic, yes. Are you talking about Grant, my cousin? I think so. Can you put Subway Surfers in the bottom? I don't know how to do that. If I did, maybe, but I think we're just going to stick with this for now. So, yeah. But anyway, this is Pre-Columbian America. So I'm going to wait about a couple more minutes, and we're going to get started with this thing, because we got a lot to cover. It's going to be very interesting. And I don't know if you guys in your education, if you've ever discussed, I'm sure we all, especially if you're from the United States, went through the American Revolution, but we're going to be talking about the centuries and thousands of years, the millennia leading up to the American Revolution. So these ads, if you guys keep getting bombarded with too many ads, let me know. So, oh, you're Grant's friend? All right. Tomic's for real. I was wondering if I knew you in person, but I'm not sure. But Meanie X is Grant. So Pre-Columbian America's fire. It really is. It is fire. So we're going to be learning about the cultures that no one wants you to talk about. So let me text Marlene. She is our #1 viewer. I don't know where she's at right now. She needs to be in here for the first stream of 2026. So she's also our moderator, so just in case you guys start being inappropriate in the comments, because sometimes people do that. Typically we did like gaming streams back in the day, but I've since then consolidated my content. If you're watching this in the future, this video will be on replay, so you can watch it later. All right, 7:38. I'm gonna get started. Eastern time. I don't know what time zone you guys are watching this in, but we got 5 viewers right now. Let's make the goal concurrent viewers 10. If we can get to 10 concurrent viewers, I'm going to start a poll, actually. Let me see if I can do a poll real quick before we get started. Let's see. I can do a chat. Should be able to. We got 2 people. You guys get XP, actually, for commenting. That's how I do that. There's a way that I can do a poll. I need to figure that out. Settings, chat filter. Dave Seibert's in the chat. My goal is to get kicked off the live. All right. Well, there's no mods on here now. I think I got like 4 mods. This was back in the old days. So Dave wants to get kicked out. Yes, he does. So it's pretty easy to do. All you got to do is start cussing, and you will be kicked off the stream. So it's that easy. But I don't recommend you do that. Anyway, that's true. All right. Anyway, let's get started with this. I don't know how to do a poll. I was trying to figure it out. I wanted to do a poll on the live. How do I do a poll on YouTube Live? Because I want to ask you guys a question to start this stream. I might be able to on the. All right, you want some post-Columbian? You want some post-Columbian content? All right. Well, we'll get to that in the next stream. We're going to be doing the Age of Exploration in the next stream. So the first three streams are going to be before the United States. We're going to do pre-Columbian America, then we're going to do the Age of Exploration, then we're going to do the colonial period, and then we're going to do the American Revolution. So let's get started with the pre-Columbian period. So we're going to start with, what is pre-Columbian? What does this term mean, right? So this is Christopher Columbus. You may have heard of him. He sailed the ocean blue in 1492. So basically anything prior to 1492 in America is considered the pre-Columbian period, because after Columbus, so Christopher Columbus was famously a European who got the funding from the monarchs of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabel, to basically lead a trip to try to find a new route to Asia for the trade. Columbus did not discover that the earth was round. That was something that most educated people in the 15th century knew already. But Christopher Columbus was funded by the monarchs of Spain to lead a fleet of 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, to try to find a new route to Asia for trading. The spice trade was really big in the East Indies and everything. So what Columbus did is he ended up landing in the Bahamas in 1492, being the first European, well, actually not really, but you'll find that out later in the stream, the first European to settle in the Americas, although he didn't actually make a full settlement. And he actually, when he died in 1506, 14 years later, he took 4 official voyages to America, 1492, 1493, 1495, and 1502, I believe, were the 4 years that he went. But he landed the first time in the Bahamas. He only landed in the Caribbean. Columbus never got to what is today the United States. But he landed in the Bahamas, and until the day he died, he thought that he was in the East Indies. And so he thought, and that's why they're called the West Indies today, some of those the islands in the Caribbean. But he thought he was in the East Indies until the day he died. He never knew that he actually discovered a brand new continent. He just thought he found a new route to India. So that is what Columbus, that's who Christopher Columbus is. And then later on, the next few decades, you'll get many explorers. You'll get Juan Ponce de Leon, I believe, was the very first man to reach what is now the United States in modern-day Florida in 1513, I believe. I believe the furthest Columbus got was Cuba. I could do it if I was a mod, but I don't know if you would want me as a mod. Well, if you want to gain mod status, all you got to do is just be persistent on these streams. If you tune into all these streams, then you will do that. But that is Christopher Columbus. So I don't know what you guys think about Christopher Columbus, but we're not going to be talking about Christopher Columbus today. But I just thought I'd explain who he was because, he's pretty important to all of this. He was not the first European to reach America. Actually, the Vikings did. About 500 years before him, which we'll get into later in the video. I'm going to see if I can charge my phone because my phone is not doing good on battery. I may not have brought the charger, so that's not good. But anyway, that's all right. So, phone's at 7%. That's great. Anyway, so that's Christopher Columbus. Right there. So, basically, the pre-Columbian period, we're talking about indigenous societies, we're talking about Native Americans, we're talking about ancient civilizations, American empires. Native Americans are the term that we use in the United States to describe the original people that lived in the United States. And I think in Canada they use the term First Nations groups, but we use the term Native Americans. So we're talking about all this stuff. This is North and South America. So pre-Columbian is considered both American continents, both North and South America. Now, the United States is in North America, but today we're actually going to be discussing both North and South America, even though in the later episodes we will not be doing that. But today we are because it just kind of relates to each other. So prior to 1492, that's all I got to know. It's basically America prior to 1492 is pre-Columbian period. So, and there were people living in the Americas before then. So we're now going to get into the natural history of the Americas and human arrival, kind of how all of that happened. So, yeah, I need to see if I have my phone's going to die. So I got my headphones so when I do this video, so when I do these YouTube videos. All right, so that's how that is. Let me put this on. See if I can do. Bear with me here, folks. So we're going to start with the natural history here. All right. See how long we keep this on. All right, so that's what's going on now. So let's get into this. So this is the Earth, if you didn't know that. Okay, so we're going to start actually before humans even existed, supposedly, if you take the scientific point of view, which has its flaws for sure. It's not 100% true. But before we get started also with this video, I want to throw out an ancient history disclaimer that everything talked about in this video is going to be, just take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of the stuff is speculative, because the records of the ancient times are not very good compared to today. A lot of what we're going to be talking about today is considered prehistory, because typically history starts when there's writing, because people wrote stuff down. During the Paleozoic era, obviously, as you can see here, there was no writing that existed. This was 538 to 251 million years ago, was the Paleozoic era. So this is just some of the stuff that, well, as you can see, America didn't really exist at the time. But this is around the time the Appalachian Mountains formed. America is very diverse. We see some ancient fish species, trilobites. You can find fossils here in the United States of these. But this is Gondwana, also known as, well, then there's Pangea, which is the supercontinent. The idea that, you know, all the continents were at one time together during the Paleozoic era. If we move on from there, we get the Mesozoic era. And this is all natural history. This is before before people existed in America. But I thought it was interesting. Yes, there were dinosaurs in the modern day United States that lived. A lot of people don't know that, but we have found, these are fossils of dinosaur bones that have been found in the United States. There's actually a species of raptor called the Utah raptor. It was discovered in Utah. But this is how it is. There have been dinosaur bones found in America. So during the Mesozoic period, as we can see here, North America is connected to Africa and South America. So you can see that. And so these are at the American Museum of Natural History. We have a Brachiosaurus and a T-Rex. So this is just what America looked like during the Mesozoic era, which is the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods, between 252 and 66 million years ago. Supposedly, the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs landed near the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, which is actually in America. So technically, the meteor, the infamous Cretaceous period meteor, hit in the Americas. So that is also something interesting as well. But a lot of people don't think about, when they think of America, they don't think of T-Rex, I don't think, typically. But that is something that happens. So that's another one of the natural histories of the era. Obviously, geography looks really different at the time. Europe's up here. You know, and this is all speculative. All this stuff's not 100% true. But what is true is we found dinosaur bones in America. That is true. So the era in which we live in today is the Cenozoic era, which this is a geologic time scale. This is something that was put on way later, obviously, in time. So you get the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic. The Mesozoic literally means middle. That's what Meso means, that prefix. But the Cenozoic era lasted the last 65 million years and is still going on today. MA is just abbreviation for million years. So the eras are divided into different periods. So we can see the Paleogene period, followed by the Neogene period, followed by the Quaternary period. We are currently living in the Quaternary period, and specifically the Holocene Epoch. So the periods are then further divided into epochs. So the very first, the Paleocene, Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene, Pliocene, Pleistocene, and the Holocene. So we are actually going to be starting with the Pleistocene Epoch, because I'm not going to go into too much of detail of what goes on before then, because, it's like, where do you start, okay? You can do a history of the United States, the history of America, pre-Columbus, but, where do you start? And I thought the Pleistocene was the best time to start, because that is when we see human arrival in the Americas. So we're going to start with this slide here, talking about the Pleistocene Epoch. So this was also known as the Ice Age period. So this is very pivotal in understanding who the Native Americans are, or who will become the Native Americans. How we doing, Marlene Seibert? Marlene Seibert is in the chat right now. That is awesome. Marlene, how are you today? So that's pretty cool. Anyway, so this is the Pleistocene Epoch right here. So we're going to talk about the Pleistocene Epoch real quick. So this was the period of time that lasted between 2.6 million years ago and 11,700 years ago. So this is the period known as the Ice Age. Now, at this time, the sea levels were relatively low at this point in history. And this is the time when humans start to migrate across the globe. Supposedly, humans started around this area of the world, the Middle East and Africa, supposedly. And during the Pleistocene Epoch, which is the Ice Age, we see a huge... this period is marked by, like I said, low sea levels and also glaciers. And the surface of the earth was really cold at this point in time. And this was obviously a long time ago. But you can see here, yeah, Marlene, so good to be here. Let's go, Marlene. Yeah, let's go. So anyway, we can see that. All right. So supposedly at this time, sea levels were low, and there are parts of the world today that are currently underwater that were actually land at the time. And so this is the theory why we think the Native Americans got to America, because they were not originally from America, but this is what we believe how they got there. So basically, the Pleistocene Epoch was a different time. We have these giant ice sheets right here. So these ice sheets are the chart from the last glacial maximum, which the last glacial maximum is basically when the glaciers were at their peak. The process of the ice sheets melting took thousands of years to do, and it was a slow process. It was a slow decline that took place. But what natural historians have put the date on the end of the Ice Age period was 11,700 years ago, which is the end of the Pleistocene Epoch. Then we get the Holocene Epoch. So, as we can see here, Beringia. Supposedly what happened, what people believe is, this area here, the Beringia, is where the Bering Strait is today, and connected Alaska to Siberia. Alaska is obviously a U.S. state, and Siberia is the far east region of Russia. So supposedly Russia and North America were at one time, you could walk from one place to another. You could walk from Russia to America back in this point, because the sea levels were so low and this Bering Strait didn't exist at the time, and it used to be what we call the Beringia, the land bridge, basically. There was a theory that had been debunked later in time that there was supposedly a land bridge linking Europe to Greenland that eventually allowed people to walk over, but that theory has since been kind of not true. And there was also a theory of people going by boat, because supposedly during this period there was a really rich collection of reefs that went along this way, and people were going there as fishermen to catch, really valuable fish and things like that. So that's how they did it. But that theory is also kind of wishy-washy. But the most accepted theory is that there was a land bridge here, that the people from some tribes from Siberia walked and then got to North America, and then subsequently started populating both continents. So that is supposedly what happened during the Pleistocene Epoch. But we can also see parts of the world that today are underwater that weren't at the time. We can see most of Indonesia. These islands did not exist at the time. Australia was much bigger than it is today. We can see that the British Isles were connected to mainland Europe at the time. We can see parts of South America were bigger. The Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico and Florida, the Florida Peninsula was bigger inland than it is today. The Great Lakes did not exist at the time because the Great Lakes formed during the melting of glaciers. Eastern China, the Eastern China coast near Shanghai today has much more land there. And so we see all this stuff. And we can just see some ice sheets that existed. There was a giant ice sheet here in southern South America, and the entirety of Canada and the northern United States was covered in an ice sheet, and so was northern Europe at the time as well. And we see various ones throughout here as well. So kind of how it is. Also, the theory Japan was connected to Korea and mainland Asia at the time as well. That's how they believe people got to Japan. So, it's one of those things that happened. We can see here as well that Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, was connected to mainland Asia as well at the time. So, it's kind of interesting to see, how the world has changed and how continents have separated over the decade or over the thousands of years. So, and then obviously the Antarctic ice sheet, but that's spread down. So, let's talk about America. Let's get our focus back on America during the Pleistocene Epoch. So, we're going to talk about the Ice Age period in North America. So this is very fascinating, and this is the reason that the people came over. So you're probably wondering, why? Sure, they walked from Siberia to Alaska. Okay, sure they did that, but why? Why would they have done that? Well, humans were a migratory species at the time. Humans had worked to populate the earth, and you can tell even by the time the Europeans arrived in America that America was very densely populated by people. And even today, it was always densely populated. There are Native Americans living in every corner of the continent at the time. And so this obviously a process happened a long time. So we're going to talk about some of the life that lived in the Pleistocene Americas. Now, I've shown 6 species that are now extinct that lived in the Americas, mostly in North America at the time. These species were giant mammals that lived at the time, known as megafauna. I put the term megafauna over here because that was the term that's used to describe any land animal over the weight of 100 pounds. And there's still megafauna that exists today, but definitely not too many in North America. But back then, in the Pleistocene Epoch, during the Ice Age, there was huge animals that lived in America at the time that are now extinct. And they all went extinct because of the decline of the glaciers, the decline of the ice sheets, the melting of the ice that destroyed their habitats, and therefore the vegetation they had been eating was no longer suitable for them. The food chains broke and everything like that. So it was a big deal. But we see species like mammoths and mastodons, 2 elephant species. Now today we obviously have the modern day elephant, but we had elephant species that were, for one, much bigger than the modern day elephant that lived in North America. The mastodons and mammoths. I currently attend college in Ohio, and the Ohio History Museum in Columbus, Ohio. They have a skeleton of a mastodon that was found in Ohio. And so this stuff existed. And it is believed that the mammoths and the mastodons were the reason that the Siberian tribes crossed the Bering Land Bridge, because they hunted these animals. And so when the mastodons and mammoths migrated to America, so did humans. So that's why we believe they came over, because of the mastodons and mammoths. But also the things that were living here, because you can tell you get a lot of meat off this thing if you eat it. Just massive. Another thing is the short-faced bear. This was a huge bear species that existed in America at the time, and these are people. This is how big this thing is. This thing was freaking massive. Short-faced bear, one of the biggest mammal species there. There was also 2 species of cats that existed. First of all, we had the saber-toothed cat, which is one of the most iconic species of the Ice Age period. There was also an American lion species right here, and this is one of its skeletons that was found in North America that existed at the time. Also they also had giant ground sloths. So there were sloths that lived on the ground, but they were massive in size. And then also we have this crazy animal right here, the Dodecarus Although the Dodecarus mainly lived in South America, but I still thought I brought it up because this thing is wicked looking. But these are some of just a few examples of animals that lived in North America at the time. That lived in the Americas during the Pleistocene Epoch. There was also a horse species and a camel species that lived in North America at the time, but it's the mammoths and the mastodons that were believed to be the reason that people arrived. So, yeah, if you guys got any opinions on any of this stuff, feel free to share them in the comments or in the chat. I would like to try to do a poll if possible. I used to be able to figure it out, but for some reason it just doesn't let me right now. I can start a goal. We're going to go wah in the chat. We're going to do a wah. Start goal, 1 super chat. That's the goal. All right. Let's see if I can I can't poll. Guys can also do super stickers as well. I guess that's the thing. Anyway, so this is like the kind of life that lived at the time. It is really hot in this room. There's actually a fan over there. Anyway, but this is known as megafauna. So these species over time died out because of the melting of the ice sheets at the end of the Pleistocene. And so the habitats just couldn't suit these animals. But I could just imagine, walking through the United States and just seeing a freaking mammoth. Man, that's just crazy. I mainly put this in here because not only is it fascinating, but it's also very important to understanding why people are here, because the early Native Americans hunted these animals, and that's big reasons that they're here today. So we're going to move on to the next slide and talk about human migration. So the Bering Land Bridge, like I already talked about. So this connected Russia to modern-day Alaska. As you guys probably know, Alaska and the United States, Alaska and Russia are very close to each other. Now, they're only separated by this Bering Strait that's here right now, so that's why they call this land bridge Beringia. Obviously, these temperatures are very cold even today, so you could imagine how they were during the Ice Age. So it's fascinating. So that is, like I explained, that is why we believe that Native Americans, how we believe they got here in the first place. So I'm going to start by talking about the Clovis culture. So this is the very first Native American society that we know of, Pre-Columbian society that we know of. Now, there's theories of ones before this, but they're not concrete. As you can see here, these are all of the different examples throughout the United States. They were really quick to populate North America. So as you can see, they're in regions like northern Mexico, most of the United States, and Canada at this time. You can tell there's a lot of people living in the eastern woodlands period. And this is in the late Pleistocene, so you can still see where the modern-day Hudson Bay is today. There's still glacier up there. Like I said, it was a very slow process. But with the lowland levels at the time, that's how the Great Lakes formed and everything like that. So this eastern woodland period area right here around the Mississippi Valley is going to be a very prime region in North America for culture. So you're going to see that later. But this is the Clovis culture. They supposedly existed between 13,050 and 12,750 years ago. What's important to note, this is still during the Pleistocene Epoch. And we can see some of the Clovis culture people in this depiction hunting down mastodons right here and mammoths and things like that. So they also were some of the first people to create the arrowhead, or what they call the Clovis points. These were used for hunting. They were usually put on the tips of spears. A lot of Native Americans at this time used spears to hunt. And so we found archaeological evidence of Clovis points all throughout North America. In North America, like I said, was settled first. But they're known as Paleo-Indians during the Pleistocene Epoch, so there's the Paleo period. So early Pleistocene people living in America are known as Paleo-Indians. They thrived in North America, invented the Clovis point, like I said, to hunt mammoths, mastodons, giant bison, and other megafauna. So there was a bison species that lived that's even bigger than the one today. The American bison is considered to be the largest land animal that still inhabits North America today. And a lot of early people of North America hunted bison. And that's what they did. Even Native Americans up through the modern period still hunted bison, and bison roamed the continent. But back in the day, they could hunt mammoths before they were extinct. The mammoth was the biggest species at the time in North America, and this was a huge food source for these hunter-gathering Paleo Indians. Now, one thing to know is, even though these Clovis points were found in these specific locations, these guys are moving around. I mean, they are moving. They're likely staying in a group of maybe 10 people, and they're moving around to find food. And things like that. So they're not staying in one place like society is today, where we just stay and live in the same place. They're moving constantly, and that's how they reach all these points of the continent so quickly. So bands of 50 people or so, sometimes less. The Clovis culture ceased to exist after the Ice Age, actually about 1,000 years before the end of the Ice Age. Now keep in mind, too, the Ice Age was also not the only Ice Age period in world history. There was supposedly multiple ice ages, so that's why we call that one the last ice age, or the last glacial maximum. So now we're going to get into a YouTube video. I'm gonna get my headphones out. We're gonna watch a YouTube video on an overview of pre-Columbian America on a map. Before I talk about it myself, we're gonna get a quick overview of it, and also save me some breath. But I'm gonna chime in as well. So we're gonna just provide a little bit of a new twist on this. Instead of it just being my perspective, we're going to get some more perspectives on this. But this is one of 3 videos we're going to be watching today. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. This library is open till 2 a.m. So if we have to go that late, that would suck, but we could. All right, let me get out of here. Okay. Yep. All right, let's go to my YouTube now. So I have my YouTube opened up. Pre-Columbian America. So let me make sure the audio is good on this real quick as we continue on. See what we got going on.
We begin around 30,000 BC. The Earth is in its last ice age. The sea.
So they're going to start with the Pleistocene as well. So let me see how the audio is on this.
We begin around 30.
Okay, it's good. All right.
Level is about 120 meters lower than.
Yeah, as you can see, these Indonesian islands don't exist at the time. I mean, all this stuff looks very different from today.
Current levels. The American continent is completely isolated by large glaciers.
Yep.
Yet, the first signs of human occupation are popping up everywhere.
Oh, by the way, this is from a channel called Geohistory. They're a great channel. I watch their videos all the time.
Bones of hunted animals and
captions
fires
on.
appear in various places on the continent.
Yeah, so these are those theories that I was talking about. There are supposedly people that lived before, or evidence of people living before the initial migration of the Clovis culture. But those have all been disputed by historians.
To this day, the origins of these early settlements remain a mystery. But a few theories are suggested.
Thank you, Marlene. Thank you.
According to one theory, people from the Bay of Biscay would have followed the 5,000.
Yeah, this is that European theory I was talking about.
The Atlantic Ocean to reach the north of the American continent.
It's interesting.
But this hypothesis is controversial and undermined by recent genetic data, which points to Asian origins of the first American settlements.
Yeah, so they did DNA tests. Okay,
Another
that's
theory
what it was.
contemplates that groups sailed along the Kelp Highway, a
So you can see Japan is completely connected here.
gigantic seaweed forest rich in fish that ran along the Pacific Rim from North Asia to America.
It also looks like all the Hawaiian Islands are connected as well. Yeah, so that's that theory of that reef that existed on the coast, but
As the Ice Age draws to a close,
it just seems unlikely to me because everything was covered in ice at the time.
Beringia forms a land corridor that connects America with Asia. The climate is milder here. Local vegetation is suitable for large animals such as bison, caribou, and mammoths, attracting Siberian populations who are hunters. Further east, the melting of enormous ice
So we already
caps
went through all
opens
this.
a corridor towards the continent. Animals, followed by humans, gradually pour in, while
So
the
as it
melting
melts,
ice
okay.
causes waters to rise. Beringia is flooded. The American continent is once again isolated.
Still is today.
New nomadic
So
populations
we can see all this stuff forms up in Canada, all these islands because of the ice age, like melting ice floods in the giant Hudson Bay.
spread across the continent who gather, fish, and hunt. The climate continues to warm up, which facilitates the domestication of plants endemic to the continent. Due to crossbreeding, American populations create and cultivate avocados, chili peppers, squash, corn, and even cassava.
So agriculture, very important to creating a society. You don't need to hunt and gather things if you can create your own food source. It's just very healthy for creating.
Ceramics appear, a very useful invention not only for storing crops but also for art.
So we're going to be in South America for a little bit, and we're going to be in there because those are where some of the most sophisticated cultures are going to start.
Meanwhile, animals such as the llama and guinea pigs are domesticated. Populations begin to settle, initially mainly on the central Mexican plateau and in the coastal areas along the Andes Mountains.
Oh, we got an ad,
That's
folks.
insane. I can't see your screen from here anymore.
I don't have my YouTube Premium membership anymore.
Eve to me is basically freedom. It's a giant open universe where
Yeah, so basically this is the we're gonna get to, well, I'll just let him talk. Sedentaries.
Gradually, groups of populations begin to take shape and the first cultures appear. In the Atacama Desert, the Chinchorros are the first in the world to mummify their dead.
The first in the world to mummify their dead. The Chinchorros beat the Egyptians in being the first culture to mummify their dead. That's pretty significant.
A
A
little
lot of people don't know that.
further north, the Valdivia culture emerges. This is one of the first to produce ceramics in large quantities. In the Mississippi Basin are the Mound Builders, a group
Yeah, so the Mississippi River, which today is a huge, boundary in North America, the mound builders,
of
we're going to see
nomadic
them.
peoples famous for the many large mounds they erect. Their chiefs meet regularly and trade develops throughout the region.
Yeah, now around all these areas out here, they're going to see a bunch of Native American mounds that were built for thousands of years because of this.
In the south, the Corral civilization is the first to emerge on the continent.
So this is the first official civilization. The Corral is also, this is what we call the Nordichico people, which we're going to get into them here in a minute. The Nordichico are considered to be among the very first, like, top 5 oldest civilizations in the world, and one of them is actually in South America, here along the Andes coast in Peru.
Brings together around 30 sites and population centers,
So Corral Supe, because it's the Corral region of Peru, and the Supe
including
region of the
Corral,
Andes Mountains
which is
and everything like
probably
that.
the first city on the continent. Pyramids, squares, as well as residential quarters are built there. This civilization is prosperous thanks to the irrigation system it develops, among other things. Yet, despite its isolation, the Corral civilization mysteriously declines and disappears around the 19th century BC.
So we're going to see this a lot with these ancient civilizations. Like, we know about them existing, but the reason, like, we have no idea about how they came to not exist anymore, how they collapsed. It remains a mystery for a lot of these cultures, but the most likely reason is probably one of two things. Either climate change led to crop failure, and so they had to move, or a civil war conflict caused these people to separate. And we see this sort of crop failure many times throughout history. We see this infighting example take place in the Olmecs with the Olmecs. How the Olmecs will split off into the Zapotecs and the Teotihuacan and the Mayans. So we're going to see that throughout this. We're going to talk more about this later
Perhaps
on.
because of the numerous earthquakes or the El Nino phenomenon, a warm sea current that causes the disappearance of fish and devastating climate upheavals.
So that's also a theory. That's interesting. Also, out of the 3 videos today, this is the only one I've actually watched.
In the center of the continent,
So
the
Mesoamerica.
Olmecs appear and form the first Mesoamerican civilization. They first develop in the city of San Lorenzo, where nearly 10,000 inhabitants live in 1600 BC. Huge basalt sculptures representing heads are built there. The Olmecs set up agricultural terraces with a complex system of water distribution.
So you'll see all these cultures kind of develop by the coast, and that was a thing for most of human history, how things develop by the coast because you get that water supply and that transportation. So all these cultures are going to be, they're going to be backed by some sort of natural supply of water.
Using U-shaped stones. Further south, the Chavin civilization emerges in the Andes. Known in particular for its religious ceremonies, this civilization prospers and deeply influences the region. Among the
So there was a number of Andean civilizations, which we're not going to be able to get into all of them today, but that was one of the cradles of civilization in America, were the Andes Mountains.
Olmecs, while San Lorenzo is in decline, La Venta reaches its peak. According to some, the first Mesoamerican pyramid was built there. To stock up on precious stones in particular, important networks of exchange are developed.
We're watching the Geohistory's overview of this. So we can see now the how the Olmecs split off. The Quiquilo, the Capacha, the Mixtecs, the Zapotecs, and the Mayans.
Of the region. There are also traces of writing among the Olmecs, but the exact origin of this invention is still debated today. Finally, Tres Zapotes is the last great Olmec city as the civilization falls into decline. This benefits the Zapotecs, who become the new dominant civilization, with Monte Alban as the capital, where writing is developing.
Teotihuacan is helping. Getting all these ads, guys. Getting all these ads over here. 100%. There we go. Teotihuacan, here we go.
A little further north is an important city called Quiquilco, but it declines from the 1st century BC because of the neighboring volcano Xitle, which, in one or more eruptions, covers the city in lava and destroys the surrounding fertile land. There is still no consensus over the precise date of this event. In any case, this benefits the neighboring city of Teotihuacan, which sees dazzling prosperity and development. Surrounded by fertile land and located near deposits of obsidian, a volcanic stone used in the making of tools, the city attracts
it's going to be a big thing for trade.
Artisans and traders from all over Mesoamerica and becomes an important hub. Monumental pyramids are built and become places of pilgrimage. At its peak, Teotihuacan is the largest city on the continent with a population of at least 100,000. Further east, the Mayan civilization is divided into a multitude
the Mayans are crazy.
Of city-states which are often rivals.
Huge landmass here.
And Calakmul, both in competition against one another, are the two greatest powers. But in 378, Teotihuacan seizes power in Tikal. A new dynasty is established there and the war continues against Calakmul. Between 550 and 575, the central districts of Teotihuacan are set on fire and vandalized, possibly during internal revolts. While in the east, Tikal is defeated by Calakmul, Teotihuacan's power.
So just like, you know, modern countries today, we see people attacking each other for power. So this is something that develops in Mesoamerica.
Until the city collapses. We return to 200 BC. At this time, in the south of the continent, the civilization of Chavin collapses, which allows the development of other civilizations in the region. The Nazca civilization develops in an arid zone, in particular by building underground aqueducts, which make it possible to transform the desert into cultivated fields.
Now, the reason we're not talking about North America that much is just because North America didn't develop as rapidly. What I mean by develop is, technologically speaking, did not develop as fast as South in Mesoamerica, probably because of the climates, the vegetation that was available. The North Americans mainly stayed hunter-gatherers. Like I said, they built mounds and everything, but a lot of them stayed hunter-gatherers, and they didn't really stay in one place, which didn't allow for a civilization. And agriculture doesn't start there until later on. So that's why South America and Mesoamerica get such a boost and are so rich in civilization as opposed to North America, because that's just how it is.
They also do large drawings, often representing animals, which become an important part of ritual ceremonies. Further north, the Moshe culture becomes prevalent. Remarkable for its
Yeah,
metallurgy and
Moches.
agricultural techniques in a desert environment, this warrior civilization spreads rapidly. Prisoners are sacrificed during rites. During the 7th century, it is probable that important climatic changes precipitates the fall of the Nazcas and the Moshe. This benefits the Wari civilization, which extends considerably to the north. Meanwhile, their
It's a
ally,
big civilization.
the Tiwanaku civilization, originating from the shores of Lake Titicaca, spread south and eastwards, thus ensuring military
Lake
and
Titicaca.
cultural domination over the entire region.
Now we're into the classical Mayans, the late
In
Mayans.
Mesoamerica, the fall of Teotihuacan leaves a void in the region, which benefits several cities that develop rapidly. In Mayan territory, rivalries remain a constant despite intense trade. The
So the Mayans and the Teotihuacan people were going to war with each other, and so now when Teotihuacan falls, the Mayans are able to really boost themselves, and you're going to see all this
cocoa
stuff.
bean
It's
is
crazy.
used as money, but it is also consumed as a
The cocoa bean.
drink during ritual ceremonies reserved for elites and kings.
So this is where we get chocolate, and then Europeans that come over later are going to steal a lot of what they have and bring it to Europe because there's no chocolate at this time. And so the Mayans invented chocolate.
The Mayans use writing and create a calendar designed by combining 3 existing calendars. The long count calendar has a cycle of 5,125 years,
Get this.
with its first cycle ending in 2012. From 7
Yeah, so that theory of the last cycle ending in 2012 led to a lot of people believe that the world was going to end in 2012, and this was like a Mayan prophecy. I was only 5 years old in 2012, but Marlene, I'm curious. Do you remember that? Do you remember like people thinking the world was going to end because the Mayan calendar like only went to 2012, at least the first cycle, because that's just when the cycle stopped? Just curious. I don't remember because I was too young, but I wonder if Marlene remembers. Marlene was definitely alive then.
180, a succession of periods of intense drought followed by a major political and demographic crisis leads to the desertion of most Mayan cities. Architectural constructions are interrupted, as are exchange networks. Dynasties collapse and only a few Mayan cities remain.
Dirt.
So Chichen Itza is the biggest,
I love dirt.
which is up there on the Yucatan Peninsula, which we're going to get to that later. None of these are sponsors, by the way, of this channel. So
The Zapotec capital of Monte Alban also collapses to the benefit of the neighboring Mixtec people. Tula, further north, grows to become the new Mesoamerican cultural center.
So now the population is going to grow, and if you thought Teotihuacan was big, you're going to see a new city, Tenochtitlan, which is the capital of the Aztec Empire, when the Aztecs come on the scene.
In the north of the continent, the development of intensive agriculture in the Mississippi River Basin spurs the growth of the so-called Mississippian cultures. Further north, around the year 1000, Vikings from Greenland reached the coasts of America. They built camps, but these are abandoned after a few years and forgotten. In the south of the continent, El Nino is
So that's why it's like, we say Christopher Columbus was really the first one to reach because he sparked the age of exploration. The Vikings just were always going everywhere, and supposedly they made it to America. Set up some camps in Greenland and Newfoundland,
probably
Canada,
responsible for the collapse of the Wari and the
They're
Tiwanaku
from Scandinavia,
civilizations.
Denmark, Norway.
This benefits the kingdom of Timor, which quickly becomes the main center of the Andes, with Chanchan as its capital. An immense city of approximately 20 square kilometers, composed among others of the 10 fortified citadels corresponding to
Marlene
10
does
kings.
remember
The
the theory of the Mayan calendar ending the world.
Chimus dominate the region through war and impose their religious beliefs, including the sacrifice of children and llamas. Other peoples and civilizations develop in South America, notably the Muiscas in the north. They are renowned for covering their new leader in gold dust before he submerges himself in a sacred lake. Further south, the kingdom of
Interesting.
Cuzco develops, where the Incas live.
These theories. Aztec time, baby.
On a small island in Lake Texcoco, The Mexicas people live in the city
Mexica.
of Mexico
The Mexica.
Tenochtitlan. In 1428, they ally with the neighboring city of Texcoco to destroy the powerful city of Azcapotzalco. Then Texcoco, Tenochtitlan, and Tlacopan unite and form the Triple Alliance. Tenochtitlan becomes the capital of the new Aztec Empire. All men receive military education.
So the Aztec Empire is a huge deal because it, they, like the Mayans, for example, were not an empire. They didn't have centralized power under one government and a very strict social hierarchy and a big military. This is something that the Aztecs come up with, and the first time it's ever really used in America. So the Aztec Empire is an empire in the sense that we know the term. It's ruled from Tenochtitlan by an emperor. There's strict ritual practice, strict hierarchy, and the men are required to get military education.
Considered to be invincible, their armies quickly conquer a large part of the Mesoamerican territory.
So they
Despite
grow
a
their
certain
territory a lot.
unity and cohesion in the empire, the heavy taxes imposed
It's also interesting that they don't start on the coast as well.
on the
They start at Lake Texcoco.
subjugated provinces becomes the cause of frequent rebellion.
But you can see they have the spread from the Atlantic to the Pacific here. So now we're getting to the Incas.
In 1438,
So this is the 15th
after
century.
pushing back and
We're getting pretty close to European arrival now.
offensive in Cusco, Pachacuti becomes the new Inca emperor. Quickly, he begins an expansionist policy throughout the Andean area. The Incas operate mines and build bridges, dams and roads to link the entire empire to Cusco. The rapidly expanding capital grows to 60,000 to 100,000 inhabitants. The Inca territory
people.
is solidly organized in 4 quadrants, which conquer in the 4 directions. Complex irrigation networks are built to cultivate land, of which about a third is intended for the emperor and
Now the
officials.
Timor are in trouble.
In 1470, the Incas lay siege to their powerful rival Chan Chan and cut their water supply. The city is defeated and the kingdom of Timor is annexed. Shortly after, Pasha
So the Inca Empire becomes the largest geographic empire in the pre-Columbian world in the Andes Mountains. See, it covers all of this region here after conquering Timor.
Kuti dies. His heirs continue to extend the Inca territory considerably. Only the Chiriguanos in the southeast, and especially the Mapuches in the far south, resist brilliantly. The emperor then hears about mysterious explorers in the north of the empire. He sets out to find them, but contracts an unknown illness and quickly dies. This disease, against which the Incas are not immune, spreads through the empire in a short time, also proving fatal for the heir. His death generates a war of succession. The Inca Empire is weakened from within, while on the coasts an external threat seems to be looming with the arrival of unknown navigators.
So basically the Inca Empire at the time that Francisco Pizarro arrives, who he is the conquistador, who conquers the Inca Empire, the Incans are already falling apart. So it's not a very good end to them at all. Then you'll see the Aztecs get overthrown and all this stuff. So that's, all right, it's a pretty good video. So, like the music. So, let's get back into the presentation now. So let's get back into the slideshow. So, I didn't want to start from the beginning, but I ended up doing that. Okay, so now we're going to get into the civilizations of South and Central America. As you saw in that clip, I'm going to take my headphones off now. So, as you saw in that clip that the Mesoamerica and South America, or Central America and South America, were the cradles of civilization for America, and that is where that most of the large civilizations and the sophisticated, technologically advanced civilizations existed at the time. So these are just some examples of the ones that we're going to be going through in this video, and some of the ones that existed, and then he talked about it all. We're just going to kind of dig a little deeper now and spend some more time on each one. So this is South America today, and this is the area we're talking about today. So there's the Norte-Chico civilization, the Olmecs, the Teotihuacan, the Zapotecs, the Mayans, the Toltecs, Aztecs, Incas, and many others. Now, I didn't really talk about the Toltecs too much. We're going to get into them later. So we're going to start with Central and South America, and then we're going to go to North America. I just thought the best way to do this video was to just divide it up based on region, because that made the most sense, because we have to cover such a large period of time, and it's hard to just go a foot reveal. All right, I guess. I don't know. Maybe later. Okay, if you guys vote for a foot reveal, if you guys want a foot reveal, maybe. If I do, I'm gonna have shoes on. I'm not taking my shoes off for that. I'll give you a foot reveal right now. I'm gonna show you real quick. There you go. Here's my foot. Boom. That's my foot. All right, so let's get into this. So we're going to talk about the three sisters. Before we start with, why these civilizations existed, we got to talk about the three sisters. These are the crops that start agriculture. You cannot have a civilization without agriculture, right? Without farming. So these four crops become staples in Mesoamerica. Obviously, civilization in America really kicks off in South America, but Mesoamerica is where it's going to really become sophisticated. And so we see maize, beans, and squash right here, or corn. Corn is the most important. So fun story, I got some popcorn right here, and so we're going to be eating it right now because America was built on corn, as you can see. I mean, all these civilizations are going to use corn. We're going to eat it. So I had some popcorn today. I was going to bring regular corn because for lunch I went to one of the cafes here, one of the food places. They had corn for lunch, and then I come back for dinner. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get some corn for this video because it'd be funny. And they were out of corn. They didn't have corn for dinner, so I had to get some popcorn. Luckily, they had some packaged popcorn. So, but this is corn. This is what America was built on right here. So, yeah, that's true. Anyway. Beans and squash. And these are the three sisters. Now, obviously, they're going to use other crops as well, like peppers, cocoa beans. The Mayans are going to use cocoa beans. The Inca are going to use potatoes. And then this stuff's going to eventually come up to North America, and the Mississippians are going to use it as well once agriculture spreads. So, start with the Nordichico civilization first. So, this is also known as the Corral Supe. That's what he referred to it as in the video. But the Nordichico civilization is the oldest civilization in America. And what I mean by civilization, I mean they had, extensive building projects. They had like agriculture. They have like a distinct society. Whereas the people like the Clovis, for example, didn't have that. Didn't have those things. They were hunter-gatherers. They were still society and they were still important, but they weren't as advanced to make them a civilization. And none is better than another. So you're welcome, Atomics Real, with that. But they lived in the Andes Mountains on the north coast of Peru. That's where the Nordichico lived. They built monumental architecture, terrace stone pyramids, and the sunken circular plazas. So this is some remnants of this city here that exists. We don't know a whole lot about the Nordichico, I'm going to be honest, because they never had a writing system, and they didn't use pottery like later civilizations. And so because there was no writing system, we don't know a lot about them, because that's how we know. For example, the reason we know so much about the Mayans is because they had a very, very detailed writing system that has been deciphered by modern historians and archaeologists. The Nordichico didn't leave anything behind for us to study, at least as far as we've discovered. And so it's hard to tell exactly what happened, but we can just tell based on archaeological findings. So we knew they had agriculture. We know they had crops like corn, beans, squash, fruits. They also had cotton for making fishing nets and textiles. They were big fishermen because they were right on the Pacific coast, so they would get fish to eat. There is, however, no evidence of wars or conflicts because the Nordic-Chico civilization was focused on religious and ritual practices. Now, this is probably unlikely because, as we know, people like to fight each other. And so the Nordic-Chico civilization never fighting each other is very uncommon. We just have no evidence of it. But there's a lot that probably went down in Nordic-Chico that we don't know about. And this is kind of sad because, you know, these people lived and now we just can't really study them too much because they just didn't leave much behind. That's why preserving history is so important. But they lived between 3000 BC and 1800 BC, so they're living a long time. This is 3,000 years before Christ. This is crazy. A long time ago. So anyway, that's the Nordic-Chico civilization. Anybody have any thoughts on the Nordic-Chico civilization in the chat? Marlene, what do you think? They ate corn back then, 3000 BC. I'm still eating corn today. It has stood the test of time, man. Amazing. Marlene, what do you think? About the Nordic-Chico society. Looks awesome. All right. So I'm going to get your guys' opinion at the end of this video. I want to see, out of all these civilizations that we talk about, which one you would like to live in the most. All right. Excuse me. So again, we have really no evidence of why they ceased to exist in 1800 BC, but probably due to crop failures forcing them to move. So we're going to now take a step up and we're going to spend most of the rest of this time in Mesoamerica. So Mesoamerica is what we know today as Mexico and Central America, because this is where the most detailed societies, the most monumentally sophisticated and technologically advanced societies lived, was Mesoamerica. The first of those was the Olmecs. The Olmecs are considered to be the very first society that existed in pre-Columbian America that we know a great deal of information about. Yes, the Nordic-Chico, we know about them existing. We don't know much about them. The Olmecs, we know a lot more about them because they actually had a writing system, although it has not really been deciphered, so we don't know as much as we could. Kind of how the Indus Valley civilization is in India. We haven't deciphered the language yet. But they existed from 1200 BC to 400 BC. So they'll exist for about 800 years. So not as long as the Nordic-Chico, but a long time. As you can see, they are characterized by these giant heads that they built. Giant stone heads, colossal stone heads to be exact. They also constructed a earthen pyramid in La Venta. It is believed that the very first pyramid ever built in the Americas was built by the Olmecs in La Venta. Actually, that's not true. The first earthen pyramid, I don't know. I think the Nordic-Chico had pyramids, so I don't know what I'm saying. But this was an earthen pyramid here in La Venta, which at the time was the biggest city in the Olmec culture. So this is an earthen pyramid. So it's different from the Nordic-Chico pyramids or the Egyptian pyramids, for example, because this was made from the ground. It was an earthen pyramid, kind of like a mound in a way. So very interesting. You don't see that too much in Mesoamerica. There's evidence of a hieroglyphic writing system. They even use calendars and a drainage system to drain water, which was a huge situation. Although their calendar was not, it was completely different from today's calendar. They still figured out how it worked, Although their astronomy was not as good as you're going to see the Mayans, for example. They firmly established an agricultural foundation in Mesoamerica because the Olmecs were the first big society in Mesoamerica. They're going to set that foundation in just about every civilization that we're going to see in Mesoamerica, including the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Zapotecs, Teotihuacan, the Mixtecs, the Toltecs, they're all going to be descended from the Olmecs. They have strong religious practices as well. They worship things like the Jaguar Man, the Sky Dragon, and Rain Baby. These are some of the gods. A lot of these Mesoamerican cultures are polytheistic, which means they believe in many gods. So they are not Christian. They are not Muslim or anything like that. They are their own thing. And it's interesting because some of these cultures, you can still see remnants of the traditions to this day. Like you can see Mayan and Aztec tradition still to this day. It's been passed down. It's kind of one of those weird phenomenons, but it's like one of those things. If you go to the area, it'd be really cool to visit some of these sites. I would love to do some videos of some of these sites. But this is the city of San Lorenzo, right here, which at another time was the biggest city of the Olmecs. Obviously, it's all in ruin now, but it was a long time ago. They also practice ritual sacrifice and bearing offerings to the gods. So ritual sacrifice is something that all of the Mesoamerican civilizations are going to participate in. They're going to do big ceremonies to sacrifice somebody. Basically, one of the Aztec traditions or Mayan traditions that we're going to get into later, they would take them to the top of the pyramid and they would, the priest would grab their heart out and give it to the gods because they believed that the gods needed blood for the sun to rise or whatever. So they would sacrifice them at dusk. I know it wasn't every night, but it was often, and they had something similar to that. But it was an interesting situation. So that's the Olmecs. So it's believed that the Olmecs fall in 400 BC around then due to many different things. Volcanic activity, shifting rivers, social unrest, and loss of trade. These things allow the Olmec civilization to fall. And so through this volcanic activity and things, crops can no longer be grown in the Olmec Gulf Coast here. So the people have to scatter and go other places. And so over the next few hundred years, 3 different distinct civilizations are going to form. The Teotihuacan, the Mont Alban, which are the Zapotecs, and then the Mayans over here in the Yucatan Peninsula region, modern-day Guatemala, Belize. They're eventually going to expand into Honduras and El Salvador as well, modern day, and then even parts of Mexico as well. But the Teotihuacan is near modern-day Mexico City, and then Mount Alban is the biggest city of the Zapotecs. So the Olmec civilization splits into 3 parts, essentially, although it's not exactly like that. And again, the reasons are unclear to some extent, but we have an idea of what they became. And so we believe that these later cultures of Mesoamerica are descended from the Olmecs. So it's interesting. And you guys got any comments in the chat about the Olmecs? Not that's okay, but we can continue. I'm sure they also invented popcorn because, it's not that difficult to make. You just got to burn it up and then it'll pop. So that goes, but, fascinating. So we just alluded to the 3 civilizations pretty much that formed after the fall of the Olmec civilization. So we're going to start by talking about the Teotihuacan civilization. So this civilization exists around modern-day Mexico City. And this is where the Aztecs are going to eventually come out. But the Aztecs don't come out till later, obviously. Or they don't get established till later. So Teotihuacan, some people call it the Teotihuacan Empire. The reason I don't call them that is because it's not the same thing. That's why I don't call it that. But the Teotihuacan civilization started around 100 BC and lasted to about 650 AD. So this civilization, existed for about 750 years, which is a very long time. If you take the current United States, it's 500 years longer. That's over double longer than we've been around. So that's a long time. They built the largest city in America during the ancient period. So during the ancient period and up to this point, Teotihuacan was the biggest city, and it had somewhere around 125,000 people to 200,000 people living in Teotihuacan. That is a huge city. And so they had to build giant housing complexes and things for these people to do. And people started getting jobs and things. So this was like a very, this is when society is, functioning. And it did in these older civilizations, kind of like as we know a modern city today. It's really interesting. And you can still go to this day and see it. They built the Pyramid of the Sun and Pyramid of the Moon. This is the Pyramid of the Sun here, which is the largest structure in Teotihuacan. You can actually go visit today. Very interesting. These were all for ceremonial purposes. These ancient cultures, and we see this with other places in the world like Egypt, were very tied to their rituals and their religion. And so they built these huge temples for the gods that they believed. And so they built these animal-like structures as for symbolic purposes. And so they have these altars and everything. They also had an extensive trading network, the Teotihuacan, that they commanded, which is another reason why they consider them an empire, just because of the sheer force that they were able to exert in the Mesoamerican region. They were a major center for production, like they said in the video. Obsidian was found in this area, and so the Teotihuacan built tools out of obsidian that could be used for hunting, building, what have you. And they would trade them with the nearby Zapotecs, the Mayans, the other cultures around the area, the tribes. And so they would trade these obsidian things. And so since Teotihuacan made these things, it made them a really a strong power, because they controlled the production of these goods. So Teotihuacan was probably definitely the most powerful at this point. So guys, what do we think about Teotihuacan? Any thoughts? All right. Let's continue. Now we're going to talk about the Zapotecs. So we just talked about Teotihuacan. We're going to talk about one of their contemporaries. So the Zapotecs lasted even longer than the Teotihuacan. So by the time the Olmec civilization officially falls, the Zapotecs have technically already been formed, but a lot of the former Olmecs end up going to the Zapotec kingdom, because the name is hard to say. It really is. I don't even know if I'm saying it right, to be honest, but it's just different languages. So, but the Zapotecs existed between 500 BC and 900 AD. So they had already been starting to exist by the time the Olmecs fall. So they're a long-lasting Mesoamerican culture. They exist till 900 AD, around the time the Mayans fall. So they're living around this spot right here along the coast. Remember the former Olmec territories right here. The Mayan territories here in the Yucatan Peninsula. So this is the Gulf of Mexico right here. So the Gulf Coast, the Gulf of America, I guess now. What do you want to call it? But these are some of the structures that the Zapotecs made. This sculpture of some sort of divine being. Looks like a bear almost. And then we have some structures and things. So they lived in the valley of Oaxaca. The capital was at Monte Alban, which we talked about earlier. They developed a calendar system, not as distinct and not as accurate as the Mayans, but it was a 260-day calendar, and it was built to track agriculture and religious events. They also influenced the later Aztec and Mixtec cultures via trade and diplomacy. So all of the cultures that come after the Zapotecs, Toltecs, Mixtecs, and Aztecs, a lot of techs, but that's just how it is, were, inspired by the Zapotecs, and they admired the Zapotecs. But you also see advanced agricultural achievements as well. So there's a lot going on here. The Zapotecs are furthering the foundation that the Olmecs had established. They're they're right in the middle between the Teotihuacans and the Mayans. So, but they're able to last a long time because they do a good job. But unlike Teotihuacan, the society isn't as powerful and as centralized. So that's how Zapotecs are. That's pretty much all I gotta say about them. I don't have too much more on the Zapotecs. They're one of the ones that people don't really talk about too much. When I think about Zapotecs, I think of zapatos, which is shoes in Spanish. Which I already did a foot reveal, but just what I think of because these are all Spanish-speaking areas. Nowadays, obviously not them. What's interesting is there's some of these cultures, like I said, is still present today. And some families, they still know how to speak some of these ancient languages, like Patwajo. That's a really weird, the Aztecs have some dialect that people, some people can still speak. It's a really interesting concept. But all right, now we're going to get into the Mayans. And I'm very excited about this slide because the Mayans are my personal favorite ancient civilization, pre-Columbian civilization. So, the Mayan civilization, in my opinion, was the greatest of them all because of their intellectual achievements. So, they existed from 250 to 900 AD. I'd like to point out as well that the Mayan civilization actually did exist longer in essence than this period. But this period here is known as Classical Maya. And this is the time when the Mayans were really challenging themselves and really inventing things and building things. There was the old Mayan kingdom and then the later Mayan kingdom society that they didn't do these crazy things that the classical Mayans did during this period. Like I said, they engaged in frequent wars with Teotihuacan, but the Mayans came out successful eventually after the fall of Teotihuacan in around the same time. But the most intellectually sophisticated pre-Columbian society, and this is my opinion, but intellectually 100%. Most sophisticated, that's debatable, obviously, but I think they're up there. So what is different about the Mayans from the Aztecs was they were not a centralized government, politically speaking. They were a collection of city-states, which at their peak, they had about 40 to 80 different city-states. That basically these were cities that governed themselves. Each city had a king. They had their own practices and all this stuff. So, but they all were backed by a shared culture, which is why they're all Mayans. The entire reach of the Mayan civilization was roughly 500,000 square kilometers. So just absolutely massive. They lived in the Yucatan Peninsula to the Guatemalan highlands in the countries of Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador today. The largest cities were Tikal, Chichen Itza, and Calakmul. This is the pyramid at, I believe, Chichen Itza. And then Tikal was the biggest. Obviously, the Teotihuacans had, fought against them, but these are some of the depictions and things. And they had monarchs, they had kings, every town had a monarchy, every city-state. So I actually have another slide about the Mayans because it is just a very, just interesting and very important time period. So this is let's just get into why they're remembered so well. Basically, they had a writing system. Now, they weren't the first, ancient American, Mesoamerican civilization that had a writing system. But their writing system was so intricate that today, modern historians were actually able to decipher what it means. And so that has told us a lot about the Mayan culture and their society and how it all functioned. They had exceptional astronomers and mathematicians. They invented a highly accurate interlocking calendar system that actually measured the 365-day year. So they figured out that it took 365 days for the Earth to orbit the sun one time. As opposed to a lot of civilizations at the time who believed the Earth was the center of the solar system, the Mayans knew. They figured out that we were orbiting the sun. And so they had a better idea of astronomy than most cultures did at the time. So they invented the 365-day calendar, which we still use today. We have today. They also were one of the first civilizations. They weren't the first, but they were one of the first to use the number 0 in their mathematics, which is pretty revolutionary, because imagine if you didn't have the number 0. You know, it's important. Developed the ability to process rubber long before Europe. Yeah, the Mayans were the first civilization to process rubber in history, coming from molten, now it comes from molten volcano stuff, or at least at that time, but the Mayans figured out before that stuff was even discovered. So they also built underwater storage repositories in their cities to store water. And they also had the famous Mesoamerican ball game, which you can see played right here, where they have to hit the ball with either their knees or their elbows to get a certain amount of points in the losing team or the winning team. I don't remember, but gets sacrificed. They did ritual sacrifices as well. This is the king of Palenque, which you can see Palenque is right here. That was one of the first cities that emerged. But this is Pakal the Great, who reigned from 615 to 683. He was on the throne for almost 60 years. It was actually one of the longest reigning, actually over 60 years. 68 years. It's one of the longest reigning monarchs in world history. We know the exact date of his reign. We know he died on August 29th of 683. We know the exact date because the Mayans kept such good record of this stuff. This is their calendar thing here, the cycle, which obviously the first one ended in 2012. Probably because they had to stop somewhere, and then it just happened to be, in the lifetimes of some of the people watching this video right now. Like I said, I remember 2012, but I don't remember people talking about that because I was 5, and that's not really what, I didn't really understand, but that is very interesting. Marlene said she remembers, though. So what do we think about the Mayans? Very, very interesting. If anybody has any questions, I might try to answer. It'd be very cool to visit some of these places. So we have a lot more, there's a lot more people that we could talk about. I just brought up Pakal the Great because he was very significant, as he was one of the longest reigning monarchs in history. Not just the history of Mesoamerica, but the history of the world. A little bit easier to pronounce than Teotihuacan, right, Marlene? I would say so. You best better believe they had corn. What are they doing up there? The whole roof shook. People are crazy. Yes, indeed, Marlene. Critical thinking, okay? Why are the Mayans important to history? This is a critical thinking question, Marlene, that I would like you to answer. Why are they important to history? In a few sentences, your opinion. Why do we study this these people. While I wait for a response, I'm going to eat some more corn. I mean, I don't blame them. I mean, this is good stuff. So a little intermission here. Marlene's now the #1 viewer of the stream. It's interesting that you guys can, like, compete to be. What does she think? We have 2 more minutes. All right, here we go. That's right. So Marlene said they created culture and had examples, and we have examples of food source and community. That's true. They inspired community and the food resource. You know, they use the stuff that we still use today. It's a very similar practice, you know. So this was a popular ball game right here, the ball game. So actually, to learn a little more about the Mayans, I actually have a video on the Mayans that we're going to watch now. So we're going to go ahead and watch the second of 3 videos that I have today. We're going to watch a video about the Mayans. Need to get out of here. That's the wrong thing. Mayan civilization. So this is an 11-minute video. I have not watched it yet.
This
but we're gonna get
video
into
is
it.
brought to you by Captivating History.
Captivating history, by the way. Thank you.
Early Maya civilization. Of late, there has been a renewed interest in the Mayan civilization. Much of it coming in 2012, when many thought the end of the Mayan calendar would coincide with the end of civilization.
Interesting. And the fact that we thought that goes to show how incredibly advanced these people are, because we actually believed that they were onto something.
What
if we would have thought they were stupid, why would we have thought that?
did the Mayans know when they created their calendar?
They were
Why
smart.
and how did this captivating ancient civilization rise and fall? Join us as we take a concise look at the most influential civilization in Mesoamerica, the
Yeah,
Maya.
sure. Sure.
From around 40,000 to 20,000 BCE, people crossed over from the land bridge
We're going back onto this.
between modern-day Alaska and Siberia into North America. They moved south in search of a warmer climate, better hunting grounds, and more bountiful plant life. They settled in modern-day Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula from around 10,000 to 8,000 BCE, also inhabiting southeastern Mexico, the Yucatan, and northwest Central America. The Mayan highlands, lowlands, and coastal areas were plentiful in natural and mineral resources, such as obsidian, jade, and fish. Agriculture took root around 6,000 BCE, leading to a massive food surplus, which in turn led to population growth. The early Maya civilization formed around their resources, and their culture blossomed. 1500 BCE to 250 CE was known as the pre-classic period. Tribal villages
So now he's getting into the 3 periods that I alluded
evolved
to
into
earlier.
tribal chiefdoms, and then into the early Mayan states. This began in 1700 BCE, when pottery developed, which made trade much easier. This trade
Yeah, pottery is a huge deal because you can now, like you said, you can transport things like water. You can transport things in them. You can make cups, baskets. You can now, you can water plants with pots. You can do all these things. I mean, it's crazy how significant pottery is. To really expand a civilization.
Between groups in Mexico and Central America led to the birth of an elite class, a ruling class that would exert control over the lower classes and characterize society's structure for many civilizations to come.
I'm choking.
This hierarchy trickled down, leading to the formation of petty chiefdoms, in which a central village would hold power over smaller hamlets. Around the 1200s
city-states.
BCE, the advanced Mayan villages became involved in regional trade, putting them in contact with other societies, including the Olmecs. The Mayans then adopted aspects of Olmec.
So yeah, the Mayans still existed at the time, but they adopted Olmec society. But like I said, a lot of the Olmec people ended up moving into the Mayan society, so it expanded it.
Society, including their gods, urbanism, rituals, and art.
So just furthering the claim that without the Olmecs, this stuff wouldn't be possible.
As wealth and power accumulated, strong cities evolved from chiefdoms to proto-states. And with
It's so cool, man.
proto-states came warfare. Mayan rulers found that they could raid other groups to gain wealth, labor, and eliminate challengers. Around this time, the lowlands Maya expanded from riversides and lakes to the interior, and central Mayan influence then expanded to the highlands area around 800 BCE. The early Mayan states formed around 400 BCE in Quiminalyuhu, El Yuhuxte, and El Mirador, owing to their increased status to warfare and trade. The evolution of the Mayan state took place, for the most part, within the formation of these regions, evident in the prestigious and grand buildings built during this time period. For example, the Lodanta Pyramid was the largest pyramid in early Mayan civilization, and in all of ancient Mesoamerica, built in the lost city of Mirador and standing at 236 feet. Warfare abounded within these states. Uprisings were commonplace, and no state was immune from it. Additionally, volcanic eruptions, overpopulation, and overuse of the soil are believed to have led to the decline of early Maya civilizations around 150 CE. The Golden Age. As the prominence of the Pacific Coast Maya decreased, that of the lowlands Maya increased. With El Mirador's fall, art, writing, and the Mayan population advanced in the lowlands, and the city of Tikal, in present-day Guatemala, rose in influence and power. With an estimated population of 100,000, Tikal expanded its influence in the surrounding areas to become a powerful state. The major political and economic question during this time concerned the rivalry between the states of Tikal and Calakmul. Tikal's loss of prominence after a long war with Calakmul left a power vacuum in which
So
many
there's civil
states asserted
wars,
their
obviously,
independence.
between them.
Calakmul emerged as the most powerful Mayan state of its day. It was a time of great cultural and intellectual growth, mostly in astronomy and developing the famous Mayan calendar. However, few empires last forever. The major cities of Tikal and Calakmul collapsed around the 9th century CE due to near-constant warfare and ecological factors. Cities were abandoned, reverting to small villages, and ending the Mayan Golden Age. From the Golden Age to the Age of Disaster. The collapse of the southern lowland cities resulted in a power shift to the Mayans of the Yucatan Peninsula. During this period, known as the Terminal Classic Era, older pre-classical cities took power, and Mayan civilization became more pan-Mesoamerican. During this era, the world-famous Chichen Itza, meaning at the mouth of the well of the Itza, came to prominence. Its location in the
And that's
northern
one of
Yucatan
the. That's
Peninsula
definitely where I would
and
want
the
to visit
resulting
if I was
reliance on maritime trade
going to
led
be
to
there.
its increased prominence in this period. As Chichen Itza gained prominence, it became the center of a Mesoamerican trade network. Simultaneously, the ruling hierarchy eroded and society became more democratic. With these changes, the Terminal Classic Era ended, and the Post-Classic Era began.
I had to pull the
Chichen
chat on
Itza
my
was
computer
not
because
to
things
last as a
died
power
before that.
center, declining in the mid-11th century owing to devastating wars. By 1100 CE, its position as a great power was
So the Mayans, still exist after the second millennium.
gone. As Mayan influence declined, the Aztecs to the north became more influential. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived at Montezuma, the leader of the Aztecs tried to convince all Maya to unite against the Spanish. But by 1530, the failure to unite against a common threat led to the Highlands and Pacific Coast Mayans being conquered by the Spanish. Throughout 1527 to 15...
So now we're into the age of exploration now, so you can see that the Spanish did come into contact with the Mayans, but the main Mayan civilization, we don't really know exactly what happened to it, the classical Mayan period.
30, the Yucatan Mayans fought bravely against the Spanish, defeating them in 1535. Yet reinforcements kept arriving from Spain,
I mean, what are they supposed to do about this? I mean, look at all these people.
and by 1546, following a last-ditch resistance effort, the Spanish had conquered all Mayan territory. The conquest
For New Spain, which New Spain is going to play a big role in the next episode of this
proved
series.
disastrous to the Pre-Columbian Mayans. 90% of their population died from European diseases, war, and slavery. And by 1697, the civilization fell, finally lost to history.
So that's 1697? Wow.
Mayan government. There were varying political systems in different Mayan societies.
Like we said, that they kind of did what they want to do, each city-state, since they had the right to rule, but, in the different eras as well.
In Chichen Itza, in the late post-classic era, a multiple joint rule system was in effect, in which the royal family jointly governed. The elites made up 10% of the population, and the middle class consisted of mostly low-level priests, soldiers, and merchants. Below the middle class, commoners were both farmers or laborers. All scholars agree that the monarchs were the ultimate rulers of Mayan states. They came from royal dynasties, basing their power on control of resources, such as obsidian. The fates of rule
Yeah, kind of how the reason all this comes about, why you get monarchies, is because, in the early stages of these city-state civilizations, somebody comes out as the ruler of the food. Like they have the biggest farm, so they control the foods. Therefore, they control everything because people need the food. So now people will work for them. And so this is just over generations. It's passed down the family. Then you get these royal dynasties. And of course, these monarchs are going to justify their claims by saying, well, the reason I'm here is because the gods put me here. And I'm a descendant of the gods, or I have the divine right to rule because of the gods, So that's something, that's they're going to justify their claims. But that's how it all starts. And that's how all civilizations, monarchies start. And people just, live like it's normal because that's society.
rulers were shakier than what they led their people to believe. Bad omens, such as drought, could threaten their reign. Capturing or sacrificing a Mayan king could mean disaster for a Mayan city. Yet, despite their eventual decline, these rulers had unquestionable power. Mayan warfare. Warfare served an important function and was a constant way of life for the Mayans. Mayan kings were fierce war captains, depicted as wearing trophy heads on their belts to symbolize sacrificed prisoners. One of the most important figures in war was the Nakam, a chief military strategist responsible for gathering and organizing armies. Only the elite could be officers. Soldiers were always the commoners or middle class. A common weapon used by the Mayans was the atlatl, or spear, and could effectively hit
Very popular. We can see the inspiration from the Clovis point here on the end of that spear.
a target from 150 feet away.
A spar.
Spiked or bladed spears, axes, and clubs were also used. Axe or club-armed soldiers supported spearmen or were used for raids. Research suggests Mayan soldiers fought out of formation due to jungle terrain. The order of battle involved an initial volley from spears and arrows, followed by hand-to-hand combat. The Maya engaged in warfare to expand their territory, control trade routes, and acquire prisoners for sacrifices to the gods. Mayan society. Religion was prevalent in Mayan life, affecting everything from trade to agriculture. The ruler was the chief priest, who would make sacrifices and perform rituals to appease the gods. Human blood was the most potent offering. However, human sacrifices were only reserved for special occasions, such as coronations of rulers or when a new temple was blessed. These sacrifices often took place in challenging times, such as disease outbreaks and famines. The religion of the Mayans was polytheistic, and not surprisingly, there
Yeah, I
were
think we have this mindset, and I did too for a while, that these sacrifices were a regular thing. Not really, but I mean, they were regular in a certain sense.
250 names for Mayan deities, the most important being the Mayan god Itzamna, the supreme deity. The gods existed in the upper world, known as the sky realm, and in the underworld. The Mayan religious life was a rich and varied part of their ancient culture. The lasting influence of the Mayans. The Spanish
Just
invasion
like Marlene said, we use a lot of the practices today.
did not totally eradicate the Mayans, as is commonly believed. After the Spanish conquest, the remaining 10% of the Maya were gathered up and put in Spanish-style settlements, where they were expected to convert to Catholicism. Aspects of Mayan culture survived and were mixed with Catholic practices. The Maya survive to this day, yet they face challenging conditions. Rainforests have been destroyed, and the Maya no longer have control of their farms. Mayan areas are now world-famous tourist destinations,
Yeah, we need to
ensuring
go.
the survival of Mayan culture,
We need to go.
providing a means of earning a living for many Mayans. The complex and intricate Mayan history stands to this day as a testament to one of the greatest Central American civilizations to ever exist. To discover more about the history of the Maya,
We're good. All right, so that's that video. Thank you. Captivating history for captivating our audience. All right, let's go back down to the Mayans here. So, we just talked about the Mayans. Marlene, what do we think further about the Mayans? I know we already talked about them. Marlene, can you send something in the chat, because I just loaded the chat on this new computer. And so I want to make sure the chat is working on it because I'm not signed in. That's how that is. That's an interesting thing. All right. Need to stand up real quick and stretch. Oh man. All right. It's about 9 p.m. now. We start at 7:30, so going on for a while. The stream's been going on for a minute. All right, so let's hopefully I can see, because I won't know if she actually chatted. All right, yes, very interesting. Okay. There we go. You guys can talk more, by the way, in the chat. So there we go. All right, now we're going to briefly discuss the remainder of Mesoamerica with the Toltecs and Mixtecs. So we kind of talked about them before. You can look here and see the Toltec. What happens if I do the pin? Oh, I can just draw on it. Wah. Wah. We can do a wah right there. Boom. All right, we can do that, or we could just just do laser pointer. So. The Toltec region was very, very large. The Toltecs existed after the fall of Teotihuacan, specifically. And they built these like totem statues that the Aztecs would come to admire the Toltecs for their uses of just kind of how they did society. So, and then there was the Mixtecs, which comes from the culture and the region. So there's the Toltec, region of influence, and there's the Toltec Empire, which is right here. But the Toltecs are obviously trading. With their extensive trade networks, and their government was a huge inspiration for the later Aztecs, who will capitalize on all they're able to do. Which we're now going to get into them. So now we're going to get into the Aztec Empire. So this is going to be very interesting. So the Aztecs, in many ways, people would argue, are even greater than the Mayans, which is very interesting. So the Aztecs existed from 1325 to 1521 AD. I think we have this mindset that the Aztecs were like these ancient people that, the Spanish came in, Hernan Cortez. Oh gosh, I just hit the microphone. Hernan Cortez came in and, took out this civilization that had existed for thousands of years. The people, in essence, as culturally did. But the Aztec Empire had been around only for, not even 200 years by the time that this happened. Is my audio still good, guys? I just slapped the microphone. Interesting situation. I just need to see if I can tighten this up a little more. Okay, so there's that. But anyway, yeah, the Aztecs were not very old by the time they were conquered by Hernan Cortez. This is a picture right here of Montezuma II, which supposedly when Hernan Cortez, and we're going to get more into the fall of the Aztec Empire in the next episode on the Age of Exploration. But the Emperor Montezuma II supposedly cursed the water supply in Mexico, and that's why they still to this day say, you know, don't drink the water in Mexico because it's poisoned, because supposedly Montezuma poisoned it. But the Aztec Empire, their biggest city was in Tenochtitlan, which is the largest city in America, which had about 300,000 people at its peak, which is absolutely insane. 300,000? Can you even imagine how many people that is? It's a lot of people. Tenochtitlan was such a good city that the Spanish took it over and made it Mexico City. Mexico City was formed from Tenochtitlan, which Tenochtitlan had been made the biggest city after Teotihuacan. Previously it had been Teotihuacan, but now it's Tenochtitlan. The Aztec Empire used hegemonic rule, which meant they had a strict government with an emperor ruling the empire and a social hierarchy of, you know, noble classes, things like that. They were big into military conquest. We talked about the military of the Mayans. Well, the Aztecs were even bigger into that. They required everyone to go to military, get a military education, every man. They also used chinampas for agriculture, which chinampas are very influential because they are basically aggregate boats, essentially. Like they are like the Aztecs pioneered the idea of having a floating garden, essentially on the lakes and rivers around the Aztec Empire. They had chinampas, which were floating gardens that could grow things. They could grow things on the water. This is something that the Aztecs came up with, and it was a very influential thing and allowed for the Aztecs to continue to grow crops, even if the climate is failing and even if the seasons are failing. If it's a dry season with no rain, they can still grow crops because they have that water supply. And now they can grow crops in even more areas within the city via these chinampas. So it's a very interesting fact that they did. So that's the Aztec Empire. Obviously, they were overthrown by Hernan Cortez in 1521. Most of the Aztecs were defeated by smallpox because the Europeans came over. The Aztecs, for one, thought the Europeans were gods. And so, because they'd never seen horses in their lives, they came with horses. But a lot of them died of smallpox. The Spanish didn't. They were completely outnumbered. The Spanish were by the Aztecs. So there's no way the Spanish could have killed all the Aztec people, in a few years. I think it took them 3 years. I think by 1524 they were all gone. But basically, smallpox was the quickest way to kill them, and that's what happened. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. But simply the Aztecs were just not immune to European diseases, and so the Europeans came over as carriers of these diseases, and the Native Americans ended up dying because they had never been exposed to these diseases before. So that's what led to the fall of the Aztec Empire and also the Inca Empire, which now we're going to get into. Guess what? The Inca Empire. So now we're heading back to South America. So we just did all of the Mesoamerican cultures. So now we're going to be doing South America. So this is the Inca Empire, which existed from 1438 to 1533 as an empire. I think it was around the 12th century when the Incas started to form, but they eventually conquer, what is Timor, and form their empire around the 15th century, around the late 15th century. But the date of the start of the Inca Empire is considered to be 1438. So the Incas are located in the Andes Mountains. They're also, geographically speaking, the largest pre-Columbian society. They're the most expansive single state, the most expansive centralized state. Technically, if you argue, you could argue the Clovis culture, but they were not centralized. The Inca Empire was incredible. This is the town of Machu Picchu, which is right here. It's famously the town built on the Andes Mountains in Peru, which I would love to go there one day. That is like one of my bucket list, things to do. I want to bring you guys some videos from there. They had centralized political administration. They built 25,000 miles of road system. So not only was there the Inca Empire this big, but they also had, they had to have a way to govern all this and, to keep people informed of what's going on. So they built a road system throughout the entire empire, which is just incredibly technologically advanced for the time in the area. And then they also had the cultivation of potatoes. South America had this new rich crop of potatoes, and when Francisco Pizarro, the guy who conquistador who conquered the Inca Empire, eventually brought potatoes to Europe, the European market. So the reason they have potatoes in Europe today, the Incas, you can thank the Incas for all that. You can thank the Mayans for chocolate and the Incas for potatoes. You're welcome. So, really cool. So now we're going to move on to the last segment of the video. Talk about the indigenous cultures of North America. So to wrap it up, guys, I want to get your opinions in the chat. What is your favorite Meso or South American civilization? Which one would you want to live in the most? Or, which one do you think is the most fascinating? And why that is, why you think that is as well. Just kind of give you guys some thinking to do in the comments before we segue into North America. Just kind of how do we feel about South America? North America is quite more ethnically diverse. We're going to see through the physical geography. If you have questions, call Robin. That's what this says. I'm not going to give you guys Robin's phone number. You guys want to prank call Robin? All right, guys, any answer? Guys, what we got? What do we think? Really nice microphone. Marlene, what do we think? Reason the Aztecs and the Mayans, or the Incas and the Aztecs, they didn't have this. If they would have had this, they would have been able to not get conquered. So it's very unfortunate. But I'm going to do that right now to make sure I don't get smallpox. And because I just ate a lot of food. And it smelled good. It smells really good too. Ooh, I had a cut on my hand. Seems like I always have a cut on my hand every time I... Marlene, you're thinking of the Aztecs. The Aztecs had the floating gardens. The Inca had the cliff top. Oh, that burnt real bad. And smelled good, though. And I'm not going to get smallpox. I agree. The Chinampas are very, very interesting. You guys should do some research on them if you guys are interested in them. Interesting. Anyway. Yep. So as we see here in North America, North America is more ethnically and physically diverse than South America, because South America in Central America, Mesoamerica, what have you, they are entirely in the tropics region of the globe. North America is in the tropics, but it's also in the temperate region and the Arctic region. So we can see all the different regions we have here of North America. So as you can see, we have the Arctic, the subarctic, the southwest, the northwest coast, or the Pacific Northwest, the Great Plains, the eastern woodlands right here, and the Caribbean down there. So there's a lot of different regions of the United States, well, modern day United States and Canada. But even some of this region spans even into northern Mexico. So Mexico, the United States, and Canada is where we're basically going to be in for this part of the video. But we're basically going to be in the United States and Canada. What is interesting about this time period is we talk all about these Central and South American civilizations, how technologically advanced they were, and how they centralized power and governance and built these huge structures. Well, we don't see exactly that same scale in North America, unfortunately. Not saying that the South American or Central American societies are any better than the North American societies, because they're not any better. They just were more technologically advanced and they had more resources to their exposure to be able to do these types of projects they wanted to do and to create these societies that they did. North America remains very hunter-gatherer-esque still, even in the time of the Mayans and the Aztecs and everything. They spend a lot of their time hunting bison. So we talked about this before. The bison are, patrolling the Great Plains. They're patrolling, well, especially the Great Plains region, but also other regions in the modern day United States. And these Native Americans had been hunting these megafauna, these animals, for generations now, ever since the days of the mammoths we talked about earlier. The Native Americans in North America create the bow and arrow here, which is why those Clovis points eventually get the term arrowhead gets pointed on them, which is where we get like the bow and arrow. So they create the bow and arrow, which is very significant for hunting these animals like the bison. Which the bison give them a lot of food source. And so the hunter-gatherers, the reason they can't stay in one area is because they need to follow the food. And so as the bison move around and migrate, the Native Americans do as well. It wasn't until we get to later cultures where we see societies that start to form systems to lure in external food. But a lot of these Native Americans have not really started practicing agriculture, and they have to get their food from external entities, such as hunting and fishing, and just utilizing whatever plants and nuts that they may have around them. So that is how North America has functioned for most of this period. The question is, what makes North America unique, and what can we learn from North America? So let's go and talk about the mound builders. So we previously alluded to the mound builders, and I have one more video to show you guys about the mound builders, but we're going to do a quick little overview of who they are. So they exist between 3500 BC and 1600 AD. So very long time, basically the entire history of their existence. Some cultures to look out for: the Poverty Point culture, the Mississippians, the Adena culture, and the Hopewell tradition. These are the cultures that are going to make these mounds and really capitalize on mound building. The question is, what are the purposes of these mounds? Well, typically they are ceremonial. Some people believe that they are just burial mounds, but that's not necessarily true. Sometimes it is, but it's not always. But they were for rituals, was mainly why they existed. So we're going to watch a quick little video on the mounds and the purposes of them and just kind of what they are. So let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, this right here is the Miamisburg Mound, located near Dayton, Ohio today. And then this is the Watson Break Mound, which is considered to be the oldest mound in North America. Oldest Native American mound. It's located in Louisiana today. So very... Let's go to the next video. So, unveiling the mysteries of ancient mound builders in North America. Whispers of the Past. This channel is by... this is made by the channel World Wonders. 38,000 subscribers.
Imagine stumbling upon a massive earthen structure rising from the heart of the American landscape.
Now, in this area where I live currently in North America, I live in what was before the Eastern Woodland period. There's mounds, all over the place. Basically, you can find them, and there's a lot that are, not even marked, that they're just there.
These are the mounds of North America.
They built so many.
Silent sentinels scattered across the continent.
So this is the remains of Cahokia, I believe, which was the largest city of the Mississippian culture.
Whispering tales of a
The largest city, Pre-Columbian, in North America. About 30,000 people living in Cahokia.
time long past.
Cahokia, sorry.
Who were these
Cahokia.
enigmatic architects? What stories do their creations tell? These are the questions that have captivated explorers, historians, and archaeologists for centuries. Join us on a journey back in time as we delve into the world of North America's ancient mound builders, seeking to unravel their secrets.
Ancient architects of the Lost World.
Our exploration takes us back millennia to a time when mammoths and mastodons still roamed the American landscape. One of the earliest known sites, Watson Break in Louisiana,
Just told you.
dates back
So this is Watson Break.
an
Okay.
astonishing 5,500 years. Its existence challenges our understanding of early societies in the Americas, suggesting a level of social organization and engineering prowess previously unimagined. These structures, meticulously aligned with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, reveal a profound understanding of the cosmos and the natural world.
Your father
Yes, they built these things based on, cosmic order and location.
knows about saving money.
So there's a
Everything
reason
I
the mounds are shaped the way they are, and there's a reason they're placed in where they are.
wearing,
Placed,
I've had since boot camp.
built along the Mississippi's flow.
The Mississippi River, a lifeblood of the North American continent, witnessed the rise of some of the most remarkable mound-building cultures. These mounds, often arranged in geometric patterns or depicting animals and birds, provide a unique window into the lives and beliefs of their creators. One such group, known as the Poverty Point culture, emerged around 3,600 years ago in present-day Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
This civilization, known for its intricate trade networks and sophisticated pottery, constructed massive earthen ridges arranged in concentric circles. Further north, in the Ohio River Valley, another mound-building culture, the Adena, began to flourish around 3,000 years ago.
So the Adena are who we believe built the famous Serpent Mound in Adams County, Ohio. The famous snake structure was the Adena culture. The Adena are actually named after a guy from Chillicothe who lived in the Adena Mansion. His name was Thomas Worthington. He was governor of Ohio. And they discovered some of the first Adena remains on his property, that his mansion was called Adena. So, no, he didn't name his property after the Native Americans. The Native Americans were named after his property. I always thought that was a funny story. Well, it's not funny, but it's interesting, and it show the mindset of most Americans in the 19th century.
The Adena people were masters of earthworks, shaping the landscape with their mounds, which could reach heights of over 60 feet. Inside these mounds, archaeologists have unearthed a treasure trove
Yeah, there's some
of
bigger than that.
artifacts, including intricately carved stone pipes, copper ornaments, and pottery adorned with elaborate designs. The presence of exotic materials, such as copper from the Great Lakes region and marine shells from the Gulf Coast, suggests a vast trade network that connected the Adena people with distant cultures. The Adena culture's influence extended far beyond the Ohio River Valley. Their distinctive mound-building style and artifacts have been found as far east as New York and as far south as Florida, indicating a widespread cultural exchange and influence.
It's incredible. Oh, so we're going to talk about Serpent Mound now. Okay.
While many mounds served as burial places or platforms for important structures,
Marlene, we've been to Serpent Mound, haven't we?
some were created for more enigmatic purposes. One such example is the Serpent Mound, a massive effigy mound located in southern Ohio, created by the Fort Ancient culture around 1,000 years ago.
So they're okay. They're claiming Fort Ancient. So we don't really like actually know, who did it. But some people say the Hopewell. Some people say the Adena. Some people say the Fort Ancient. They're all just kind of like successors to each other. The Fort Ancient culture was a culture that existed around the year 1000 ish, second millennium AD. So kind of a Mississippian contemporary.
The Serpent Mound's precise astronomical alignments, with its head pointing towards the summer solstice sunset,
I don't know why he's not showing it in the
and its
video.
coils aligning with significant stars, suggest a deep connection to celestial events.
Keep showing
It
Cahokia.
stands as a testament to the enduring power of human imagination and our innate desire to connect with the cosmos.
Cities of the Mound Builders.
For centuries, the image of ancient North America was one of small nomadic tribes. Yet the mounds themselves tell a different story. Cahokia, located near present-day
there's
St.
Cahokia.
Louis, Missouri, stands as the most dramatic example. At its peak around 1100 AD, Cahokia was a sprawling metropolis, home to an estimated 20,000 people. Monk's Mound, a testament to human ingenuity, rises 100 feet high, covering an area larger than the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Wow.
Evidence suggests specialized crafts, trade, and governance, all pointing towards a level of urban sophistication rarely associated with pre-Columbian America.
Pretty crazy. Whispers from the tombs.
Archaeological excavations of mounds, particularly burial mounds, have provided invaluable insights into the social structure and beliefs of these ancient societies. Grave goods, often interred with the deceased, offer glimpses into the lives they led.
Yeah, so ceremonially, they would bury people, not only people in these mounds at times, but they would also bury, items that they found significant. That would be, were spiritual, like tools or jewelry, or like minerals like copper or obsidian, or whatever have you. So iron, things like that.
The afterlife they envisioned. In some mounds, archaeologists have discovered elaborate burials of individuals adorned with copper ornaments, intricately woven textiles, and thousands of shell beads, indicating a position
shell beads.
of high status within their communities. Examining the variations in burial practices across different mounds provides clues about the social hierarchy, religious beliefs, and cultural practices of these ancient societies.
Columbus, Jet's Pizza is on Uber Eats. Get a buy one, get one
Yeah, they didn't have pizza.
four-corner pizza. Only on Uber Eats.
Shop Granger.
Or
Talk shop for your
Jet,
shop. 1 million
Uber
industrial grade
Eats.
products backed by 24/7
Or Granger.
customer
They didn't
support.
have Granger either. Granger's not sponsored. Or the, pizza place. Uber Eats.
The celestial bodies played a pivotal role in the lives of the mound builders. Many mounds, particularly those built by the Hopewell and Mississippian cultures, exhibit precise astronomical alignments, indicating a sophisticated understanding of the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. For example, at Newark Earthworks in Ohio, a complex of interconnected
And Newark's like only 60 miles from here.
earthworks covering over
Athens.
4 square miles, several mounds and earthen enclosures align with significant points on the lunar cycle, including the lunar standstills, which occur every 18.6 years.
The reason Ohio is so rich with these mounds is because it was basically it was like the center of the eastern woodland culture, and it had the Ohio River Valley, which was very significant.
The mounds, in a sense, served as giant calendars and observatories, allowing them to track the seasons, predict eclipses, and maintain a harmonious relationship with the natural world.
We need to go do a video at the Newark Mound.
The mound engineering, they were deep.
Sacred spaces, sacred earth grid.
The mounds weren't just feats of engineering, they were deeply intertwined with the spiritual beliefs of their creators. The very act of shaping the earth into these monumental forms was likely imbued with ritualistic significance. By mounding the earth, these ancient societies were perhaps honoring that connection, creating spaces where the earthly and the celestial could converge. These structures weren't just tombs or platforms, they were living, breathing spaces where communities came together to celebrate, to mourn, to connect with the cosmos. The mounds, towering above the surrounding landscape, may have served as symbolic representations of the sacred mountains, believed to connect the earthly realm with the heavens.
Interesting.
Many mounds served as platforms for important structures, elevating them above the landscape and imbuing them with an aura of power and authority. Some mounds, particularly those associated with elite burials, likely supported elaborate residences for the ruling class. Imagine chiefs and priests, adorned in colorful garments and adorned with symbols of their status, presiding over ceremonies from atop these earthen pyramids. Other mounds may have served as temples, dedicated to the worship of deities associated with the sun, moon, and stars.
Yeah, it's interesting that, like, you're talking about cosmos, but, you know, all this stuff still stands today, and you can visit it all these centuries later.
The mounds, aligned with celestial events,
Millennia
would have
later.
served as powerful symbols of their connection to the cosmos.
Enduring enigmas, unincorporated. What does it say? Unanswered questions. That's loud. We're still in Cahokia.
And to ponder.
Why was that? Legacy etched in earth.
The mounds of North America stand as silent testaments to the ingenuity, creativity, and spiritual depth of their creators. They remind us that the history of the Americas is far older and more complex than we often realize.
Yeah.
These monumental structures, rising from the earth, challenge us to look beyond the written word and to listen to the whispers of the past. The mounds, in their silent grandeur, invite us to contemplate the mysteries of the past and to ponder the enduring legacy of these ancient architects of a vanished world.
Shadows of disappearance.
The grandeur of cities like Cahokia only deepens the mystery of the mound builders' decline. These were complex societies.
Should definitely do a video at Cahokia sometime. We should.
Capable of incredible feats of engineering and social organization. Their disappearance from the archaeological record is a puzzle that has captivated scholars for generations. Adding to the complexity is the fact that not all mound-building cultures vanished at the same time or in the same way.
Climate, conflict, cultural shifts. So why they end?
Archaeologists and historians have put forth a range of theories to explain the decline of the mound builders, each with its own set of supporting evidence and counterarguments. One persistent theory points to environmental factors, such as prolonged droughts or flooding, which could have disrupted agricultural cycles and led to widespread famine. Another theory suggests that conflict, either between different mound-building groups or with newly arriving populations, played a role in their downfall. Evidence of warfare, such as defensive palisades around settlements and skeletal remains bearing the marks of violence, hints at a turbulent period in their history. Yet, it's also important to consider the possibility of cultural shifts, internal transformations that altered the course of these societies.
Is the light too bright or is that good?
While the mysteries of the mound builders' decline may never be fully solved, their legacy continues to resonate in the present day. The mounds themselves, though often overlooked, stand as enduring reminders of the rich history and cultural diversity of ancient North America. They challenge us to reconsider our assumptions about the past and to acknowledge the achievements of civilizations that flourished long before European contact. For many Native American tribes, the mounds hold deep cultural and spiritual significance. They are seen as sacred sites, places where ancestors are buried, and where connections to the past remain strong. In recent years, there has been a growing movement to protect and preserve these sites, not just as archaeological treasures, but as living landscapes that continue to hold meaning for indigenous communities.
Yes.
The study of the mound builders has also fostered a greater appreciation for the complexity of ancient societies in the Americas. Their sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, their mastery of engineering, and their intricate trade networks challenge the simplistic narratives that once dominated our understanding of pre-Columbian history.
Tapestry of... It shows it too fast. Tapestry of cultures woven in earth.
The story of the mound builders is not a single narrative, but rather a tapestry woven from the threads of countless lives, beliefs, and experiences. Each mound, each artifact, each astronomical alignment offers a glimpse into a world both familiar and profoundly different from our own. As we continue to explore these ancient sites, using the tools of archaeology, genetics, and cultural anthropology, we gain a deeper understanding not only of the past, but also of ourselves. The mound builders, in their ingenuity, their resilience, and their deep connection to the natural world, offer timeless lessons about human potential and the enduring power of culture. Their story, though fragmented and incomplete, reminds us that the past is never truly gone. It lives on in the landscapes we inhabit, the stories we tell, and the questions we continue to ask.
Your upgrade is ready, Miss Langley.
My upgrade?
Yes. Enjoy.
Chase Sapphire does not sponsor this video.
Experience the sounds of Nashville with Chase Sapphire Reserve.
All right, that's good. It's all good stuff. Legacy of in Earth and Sky.
The sun sets over a field in Ohio, casting long shadows from the gently sloping sides of Serpent Mound. Thousands of years after its creation, this effigy of earth and sky still inspires awe. It stands as a powerful symbol of the enduring legacy of the mound builders. While their cultures may have vanished, their monuments remain, silent sentinels guarding the secrets of their past. The mounds are more than just piles of earth. They are testaments to human ingenuity. They remind us that the history of this continent is far richer and more nuanced than traditional narratives suggest. Long before European arrival, sophisticated societies thrived here, developing complex social structures. The mound builders, though separated from us by centuries, speak to a fundamental human desire to connect with something larger than ourselves. Their legacy is not just in the physical structures they left behind, but also in the enduring mysteries they bequeath to us. Today, as archaeologists carefully sift through the layers of earth, uncovering fragments of pottery tools and skeletal remains, they are piecing together a more complete picture of these lost cultures. Yet, for all that we've learned, countless questions remain. What stories did they tell around flickering fires as they gazed upon the same stars that grace our night sky? What dreams did they nurture as they shaped the earth into towering monuments? These are questions that echo through the ages. The mounds stand as silent invitations to listen, to learn, and to remember. They challenge us to broaden our understanding of history and to appreciate the diversity and complexity of ancient American cultures. As we continue to explore these enigmatic sites, we honor the legacy of the mound builders, ensuring that their whispers continue to echo through time.
Abrupt ending to that video. Anyway, that is the video. The thing about that video that was weird, it just kind of showed Cahokia the whole time. So that was kind of lame, but I know the information was good, though. The information was good. All right. Marlene, what do we think about mound builders so far? Or people in the chat, what do we think about mound builders so far? They're different from the South American cultures and the Central American cultures, but they are still very interesting and important in many respects. I find them very fascinating, personally. And I hope to see, later on in my lifetime and, in the future, that more gets discovered about them. So we're gonna get back into this with the poverty point culture with North America. So the poverty point culture exists between 1800 BC and 700 BC. Really the first major culture to build mounds. Obviously, they weren't the very first. The first one to build mounds was the Evans culture, which built the Watson Break Mound in Louisiana. The poverty point culture is also from Louisiana, so it's pretty safe to say that the mound building practice started in the state of Louisiana, modern day Louisiana, obviously. Louisiana was far from existing back then. It's named after a French colony, obviously. So they constructed these like C-shaped ridge mounds, the poverty point culture, which they were one of the very first ones in North America. They had a 1,000-mile trading network. They traded minerals with tribes in the Midwest. The thing about North America is they were very rich in minerals like copper, iron ore, sandstone, clay, all these things, obsidian, that was traded to other cultures with the culture. So a lot of these, especially you'll see with the Hopewell tradition, but the poverty point culture kind of starts it where these tribes, these hunter-gathering tribes are trading with each other. That's kind of how they get their stuff. It's a very traditional economy. But they also are heavily relying on hunting, fishing local nuts and plants for food sources. And they serve spiritual purposes, the mounds, as we already talked about. So now we're going to talk about the Hopewell tradition. I didn't have a designated slide about the Adena, but the Adena lived in the Ohio region, the Ohio River region, kind of the precursors to the Hopewell tradition. So the Hopewell tradition existed from 100 BC to 580. They dominated the eastern woodlands region of the United States. Extensive trade networks, like I said, these were all the different cultures influenced by the Hopewell tradition. So the tradition, notice how it's not a society or cultures per se, it's a tradition. It is what is being, interacted, trading, commerce, things like this. Geometric earthworks. This is a picture from the Hopewell National Park. It's in Chillicothe, Ohio. Marlene, we have also been there. Very cool. Elaborate burial practices. They lived in small, scattered settlements. Groups relied on hunting, fishing, and gathering, like I said. And this will obviously change when we get to the Mississippian culture. But these are all of the points that Hopewell is interacting with together. They all are. So if we take the largest region, the Laurel Complex, we have the Point Peninsula. So there's some up in Canada today and some as far south as Florida today, the Swift Creek culture. There's the Ohio Hopewell here. Goodall Focus Culture Complex, or Couter. The New York Hopewell, there's the Crab Orchard Culture. The Havana Hopewell along the Mississippi. The Templeo Hopewell. Cooper Hopewell, Kansas City Hopewell. I mean, they're all over the place. Marksville, so you got down Louisiana, even some in Texas. So that's the Hopewell sphere of influence. The one downside to filming late at night in college, filming late at night, is you can't talk during these videos very well, very efficiently. So that's what's going on with that. So that's the Hopewell tradition. So now we're going to get into the Mississippians. So they alluded to the Mississippians. The Mississippians are considered to be the most advanced of the North American cultures, pretty much. So they were also large mound builders, sedentary maize agriculture. So the Mississippians really established agriculture as a practice in North America. As we remember, the South Americans and Mesoamericans have been using this forever, but it finally gets integrated into North American society through the Mississippians and their contemporaries here. We brought up Fort Ancient. There's also the South Appalachian culture, the Caddoan Mississippian, the Oloats. So there's a hierarchical urban settlements. Cahokia, which is right here, and they also showed Cahokia in the video many times. Basically, the whole video was Cahokia. It was the largest city in North America. The video said there was a population of 20,000. I saw more, a greater estimate, a more ambitious estimate. if you would. 30,000 people. But either way, it's a lot of people living here. But Cahokia is considered to be the largest city in pre-Columbian North America. But they also built mounds. So the Mississippians, obviously, they're called the Mississippians because they were created their society on the banks of the Mississippi River. So we talked a lot about mound builders, but not all of North Americans built mounds. For example, there are some other unique societies, and we're approaching the end of the stream now. But there are other societies that I want to point at that existed in North America that people don't get a lot of attention, and they also, if you have the mindset that every North American built mounds, obviously, that's not true or wrong, but I don't think anybody really does. But you never know, they might. But Puebloans existed, so we have the Puebloans here. So these were located in the North American Southwest, so Arizona, New Mexico, parts of northern Mexico as well, the country of Mexico. But they built towns inside cliffs for defensive purposes. They were also expert weavers and farmers and potters. So they made these they weaved these baskets together, basket weavers. And this was a very common practice amongst the indigenous people of the North American Southwest. So also highly organized communal society. So they lived in these were made in the cliffs, these towns, which is really interesting. I would love to visit these as well. I think the most prominent ones are located in New Mexico. There's some near, that area. Really interesting. Obviously, you get Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is one of the first settlements, 1610, by the Spanish, the Rio Grande. So now we're going to get to some of the other regions that have unique cultures that a lot of people don't hit up, because I want to hit up every single region of North America, especially because North America is so diverse. So now we're going to talk about the Pacific Northwest. So as we can see, they were located along the Pacific coastal region of the United States and Canada. This culture of people. Obviously, there's a bunch of different groups. You have the Haida, the Tlingit, the Coast Salish, the Makah, and the Chinook peoples. They relied heavily on marine life for food because they were right by the coast, so they fished marine fish and had different resources, because the different areas of Native Americans have different resources based on where they live, where they're situated. They are renowned for having carved these totem poles here. Again, ritual things having to do with this. But that is what, when we think of the Pacific Northwest Native Americans, we think of the totem poles, which were built by them. So, pretty interesting. So now I want to shift our focus to the Caribbean, which the Caribbean is still technically North America, and I don't want to do a video talking about pre-Columbian America without talking about the indigenous people of the Caribbean. So these groups make up the Taínos, the Caribes, and the Guanahatabe. So these are there's also obviously multiple of them, but this is kind of the regions in which they existed. So the Guanahatabe existed in, as we can see here, Western Cuba, and then the Western Taíno in most of Cuba. The Lucayon Taíno up here in the Bahamas area. We have the classic Taíno in what is the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and then the Eastern Taíno here in what is now St. Kitts and Nevis, Barbados, all those countries today that we have, U.S. Virgin Islands, stuff like that, which we're going to get more into the territories later in the series. So Kalinago as well, which are the Caribs, which is where the Caribbean people get their names, are living down here in these island nations that are now today. So those are the indigenous people of the Caribbean. Just like any other place, they have roots as well. But they were big into, maritime expertise. So they, were skilled navigators. So they were, traveling between the islands. That's probably how they originally got there as well. Just a broad group of cultures located in the Caribbean islands. These are some of the pottery that they've done, some of the things they've created. So they had different agricultural practices. They harvested cassava, sweet potatoes, and corn, because just what they had, different stuff. So still corn, guys. Still the cradle of civilization. But You know, you see all these things. Focused on fishing and Canuco agriculture. They had political chiefdoms and a matrilineal social order. Basically, they had their family ties backed up by their maternal lines, so the mom's side. When typically most of them had been patrilineal, most of these societies. So, but the indigenous people of the Caribbean had a different mindset on that. It's very fascinating. This picture is really cool. So you see some sea turtles there. Yeah, my uncle used to live and my cousins used to live in the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands. So I always used to go down there as a kid. And I remember seeing sea turtles. It was the coolest thing. Then we got a stingray down there too. I remember seeing a stingray on the beach as well. Big maritime stuff. So the last group of people I would like to talk about, and I would like to also mention that there are other regions, but I wanted to focus on North America. And there are other regions, that there are people living in, such as the Amazon rainforest, that I would like to admit that still have people living there today. Is wondering why, we didn't talk about much of South America outside of, the Andes Mountains. Well, there were people living there, and there still are, actually, in some ways. And even this Arctic environment right here that we see, the people of the Arctic, they still live there, some of the Inuit indigenous people. So the Inuits, the Dorsets, and the Yupik cultures. So they're located, modern day Canada, Alaska, Greenland, which is in North America. They had profound adaptations to extreme cold. They built igloo structures, so we can see igloos right here, pretty stereotypical, but, it's really interesting to me and really cool. Hunting and fishing, in tundra climates, and then they had strong oral traditions. They care a lot about, passing on of stories and all these things. So very cool. So that's how that is. But I would like to bring up one last thing before we end, as we, segue into the next episode, which is going to be the Age of Exploration. In the year 1000 AD, in this Arctic region, the Vikings from Norway enter. First, they reach Newfoundland, which is in modern-day Canada. And then they head up north and reach Greenland. They set up camps, no permanent settlements, obviously, but set up camps. Whether or not they interacted with the Native Americans, who knows? But Leif Erikson was supposedly the very first European to reach America. And this is a statue of him in Reykjavik, Iceland. He was the Viking leader that led the very first trip to America. The Vikings sent. This is in 1000 AD, so this is almost 500 years before Christopher Columbus. So very interesting. So they're from Scandinavia, obviously. So they're traveling everywhere. The British Isles, Ireland, Iceland, Greenland, and they're traveling everywhere. And Iceland is very close to Greenland. Iceland's kind of the halfway point, actually closer to Greenland than it is Britain and Scotland and stuff like that. But the Vikings were constantly at sea, so it's not surprising that they were the first group to make it to America, but Leif Erikson doesn't really get credit for it. But that is going to be this video. So that is the entire history, very broadly. We left a lot out. If you guys have anything you guys want to say in the chat or in the comments, that was the best that I could probably do in this amount of time, as of now, to kind of give you guys the best understanding of what pre-Columbian life was. At the time. Obviously, eventually we're going to see Europeans come in, and they're unfortunately going to erase all of this culture that has existed. And they're going to take over these lands that these native people are living in, because Europeans have guns, they have all these modern technology that the people of the Americas don't have. So that's how it is. Key takeaways for this, that's what those are. So hope you guys enjoyed this stream. If anybody has anything they'd like to say in the comments or the chat, let me know before we end. Marlene enjoyed this live chat and all the content. Yes, it was a lot of good content. But that's how I want to start, celebrating America's 250th this year. So if you guys, have any requests, if you want to see any videos on any of these specific cultures, like if you want to see a video on the Zapotecs, or if you want to see a video on the Mayans, if you want to see a video on the Mississippians, we can obviously look at that at some point. And I would like to visit some of these sites, especially the ones in North America that I'm able to get to easily. But I would really like to visit, Chichen Itza, Tenochtitlan, Machu Picchu, some of these places in South and Central America would be very interesting to visit as well. And it's important to note, there's still some indigenous people living to this day, and on reservations and things out in the United States specifically. But there's still some, in Alaska and northern Canada, and then you have some in the Amazon rainforest in South America. Just because we didn't talk about it in this video doesn't mean there wasn't people living there. The American continents were very densely populated, and some of the most densely populated, at least I read, some of the most densely populated area on Earth, because there's just Native Americans everywhere. And the Europeans are going to find that a problem when they're trying to conquer everything, because there are Native Americans everywhere. And they're dealing with this issue up through even like the 20th century almost about this, this expansion. So that's just an interesting thing, at least late 19th century. But yeah, Marlene, we got anything else to say before we end the stream? Very interesting. Also appreciated this new mic, so I'll probably be sure to, include these in my later videos. Yeah, I'm 10 minutes past the time I have this room reserved, so technically people can come in here and take over the room if they want to, but I don't think anybody had it scheduled past, 10 o'clock on a Monday night. But Marlene, we got anything else to say here? Closing thoughts? Or anybody in the comments? In the chat, good video stream. Yes, indeed. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and head back to my dorm. So, it was fun checking this stuff out today. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe. I will leave this video up permanently on my channel so you guys can watch it whenever. I'll leave it on for replay. So, yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe. Bye.